Je t'aime. Podcast quoi?
So Quebecois has become podcast quoi. It's not like Le Petit Québécois? I can't even remember.
I think it's just Je t'aime Québécois. Am I wrong?
Québécois.
No, Je t'aime Québécois. No.
That is not a Quebecois accent. That is not an anything accent.
It's her saying it. It's her saying it to him.
I know. No, I'm not saying you. I'm not criticizing you. I'm talking about Bradley.
Oh, yes.
Bradley Pitstein, and his AP French.
Buongiorno. He already did that. Anyway, we'll talk.
He's done the World War II movie where he jokes about the fact that he can't really do accents. Yeah. He's covered. He's covered.
Oh, he did it in the other movie. He hung a lantern on in the other movie.
Exactly. He hung a lantern on it. Hello, everybody. This is a podcast called Blank Check with Griffin and David. I'm Griffin.
I'm David.
Wow.
And I'm Chris.
I'm pumped up.
Should I jump in there? There's Ben.
Yes.
If you want.
Yes.
Hey, I'm here too. Hi.
Ben's here.
Hey, Ben.
It's a podcast about filmographies, directors who have massive success early on in their career and are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion products they want. Sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they're allied, baby. And this is a mini-series on the films of Robert Zemeckis, the infamous Bobby Z. We're nearing the end. We're talking Allied. It's the great Allied off. I feel like I've been hyping this one up.
It's big.
The entire miniseries. I don't know if anyone's actually excited.
Right. You've been like Don King, Rumble in the Jungling, like this being like, finally, people are going to know the verdict. Allied, good or bad. Sims versus Newman.
I mean, the thing is, do we know who can be trusted in this? Really?
That's
the
question,
podcast?
Chris. I feel like this is going to be like the Big Eyes episode in which I fight really hard and then everyone else kind of shrugs.
Griffin, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but David is a German spy.
Oh, no, I knew it.
And I'm afraid that, as you know, with podcast protocols for these kinds of things, you have to kill him with your own hand.
Wait a second. Chris.
No, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Are you telling me that David grew up in Germany?
He grew up, and as a baby, no, actually, he was about 9. They parachuted him into London.
Wow.
And then he pretended to be an American kid in London.
Wow. God, I want to punch this piano so hard right now.
Play La Marseillaise. God. Griffin over Zoom.
Over Zoom.
Boy, oh boy.
This is why I want to get through the intro as quickly as possible. How many World War II movies has Brad Pitt now made?
It's a lot. I was actually thinking about this. 3
within 10 years?
Right. You've got right around this time, you have Fury, of course.
Yeah.
Everyone remembers Fury so well.
That was the prequel to Fast and Furious.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yes.
Right.
Once there was only Fury.
Yep.
What are some other ones, Griffin? Hit me, because there are
Inglourious Bastards.
Of course.
And then this is what I was trying to remember if there's one more.
All right, well, let's find out. Obviously, World War Z was about World War Z, not World War II, so it's not that one.
If you looked at only the end of the title in a mirror, you could get confused, but yeah.
Right, exactly. What else? I'm looking at his filmography. Legends of the Fall, is that the First World War, I want to say, that he goes to in that one? So not the same, and 7 Years in Tibet, that's sort of post-World War. That's got a little World War II action in it. I'm enjoying this. Spy Game, obviously there's a lot of spy games being played, but no World War II.
Would you count World War Z 2?
That would be a World War II movie. It would have to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would, right.
That's what I was thinking.
If we did finally get World War Z 2, I suppose, right, you have to consider that.
Okay. Sure.
Aren't they reanimating Andrei Tatarsky to direct World War Z 2? Isn't that?
Tarkovsky's coming in?
Yeah, I think so, right?
Yeah, of course.
He wants to do an action movie, I heard. That's what his reps are saying.
he just wants to get his foot in the door. He wants to show that he can handle that kind of budget. Yeah.
There was War Machine, another war movie, but
sure.
the Iraq War.
Right.
I guess that's it. But he does have the look of a handsome old movie star, so it makes sense. Put him in old war movies.
Right. Like once he passes 40, he gets really into being this sort of like haunted, lantern-jawed golden boy in the war. Yeah.
Right. And then of course there's Troy, which is about the sack of Troy. Talk about a war, the Trojan War.
That was a war.
Yeah.
As we talk about World War II movies, was it my last movie? Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. My last movie had to do with the Second World War. And
Excellent
for a long
film.
time, World War II was like your angle. That was your way into the Academy, right? Like,
Yeah.
these Academy voters were like, World War II, I'm watching it. I love it.
Yeah, that was ultimate boomer bait. Right. Your last movie. Your last movie, Operation Finale.
I think sometime before Operation Finale came out, that changed.
But it's kind of unclear.
Where's the line? I can't quite find. Well, honestly, look how Allied did with the Oscars.
That's the thing. I was trying to sort of chart this. I rewatched Finale today before watching Allied, Chris, which is an excellent
That's
movie. I still
extremely
really like it a
kind
lot.
of you and maybe masochistic.
But no. It's a very enjoyable film. It's on Hulu. A crackerjack movie.
Well, if it's on Hulu, it must be good.
Exactly. But I was thinking about like Finale and this film, and then even sort of like Fury, which is slightly more in the action vein, but I feel like also kind of underperformed. It does feel like there's been this shift where, as you said, World War II used to be money in the bank.
Now it's World War Who?
Oh boy! Well, now it's just like the History Channel's domain or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like they're just we'll handle it, fellas.
I also feel like this is the kind of movie that used to be, and Finale as well, where it's like you have like two big stars in a World War II movie, and there's like sort of its epic backdrop, emotional story in front of that. Whether it's a real life story or it's a fictional story, it's like here's a character-driven story in this setting. And now I feel like when war movies do well, more often than not, they are modern, but even if they aren't, they're movies that are sold entirely on like the viscerality of you are in the war, right? Like when war movies do well, it's 1917 and it's Lone Survivor. It's like that zone. I feel like there are a couple other that have done well in recent years. 1917 is maybe the only one to really like Oscar breakthrough, but I wonder if to some degree Inglourious Bastards is the dividing line.
It might be because but there's a few. I want to just take you through a couple. So some examples I would say of movies like you're talking about.
Our guest today, by the way, is Chris Weitz, director of Operation Finale.
That's true. Hello, Chris.
Producer of Night Eggs. And by the way, we've got some housekeeping to do on Night Eggs in a little bit, but I don't want to stop you there.
We're going to get to it.
We'll get to that.
Strap in.
Okay, so Midway, right? That was a movie that came out last year, made like 50 million, kind of ignored. That's a good example to me of like World War II, no longer money in the bank. Greyhound this year, obviously sold to Apple TV, but people were kind of like, oh yeah, whatever. Allied is a good example, but Dunkirk, Griffin, obviously that has the Nolan brand, so that helps it along. But that's a successful. But like you say, that's like what you're talking about, where it's like you're in the war, baby.
Right.
This
I think it's
visceral. This is you're rattling you around.
If somebody doesn't have like an arm hanging off, right? Nobody cares anymore.
Right. People want the VR experience.
Right. Other underperformers, you got The Monuments Men, you've got Red Tails. These are not movies that were out and out bombs. They were just movies that kind of like did okay. Defiance. Remember Defiance? Daniel Craig? Yeah. Valkyrie, of course, which I recently watched and is not very good.
No, it's not very good. But to this point, 1917 and why am I forgetting the other one? Dunkirk are the only two that became major Oscar players.
Right, that's right. 1917, obviously, World War I. Yeah, no, absolutely.
I feel like especially like if you go 2009 is when the Academy announces the expanded field, right? Inglourious Bastards gets Best Picture, Best Director, Best Everything nominations that year. And you could imagine a scenario in which you're like, well, if there are going to be 10 nominees every year, probably one of them's going to be a war film, right? You can see that just being like, whatever the best war movie is every year will end up getting one of those slots. And instead, it's slipped, as you said, Weitz.
Yeah, maybe it's after Saving Private Ryan, it's sort of upped the ante in terms of, viscerality. Right. Inglourious Bastard kind of turned it a bit postmodern.
Right. And Private Ryan's like a couple years after English Patient, which is the last of that sort of war film to, I think, really connect in both levels.
But is it also, it's like how they say so many directors, it's like you have a space movie and you're like, for Allied, for Zemeckis, it's like he never made a war movie, right?
Check.
Doesn't everyone want to crack at that eventually?
Yeah. But it's also such a pointedly old-fashioned movie, which is what I like about it, but I think is what a lot of people find unengaging and distancing about it.
Right. I mean, that's true. I mean, right. There's a difference between critical reaction and box office. Like, the box office reaction to this movie, you can chart up to plenty of stuff. Rated R, right after Trump's election, weird publicity cycle where Brad Pitt basically doesn't want to talk about the movie. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of stuff that hamstrung this movie.
There's all the rumor mongering about the two of them and his recent divorce, and it's also like a straight adult movie with a very basic premise. There's not a lot of hook in the marketing, and they're targeting a very specific audience.
Right. But yes, right. In terms of the critical reaction, more interesting, I would say.
You say it's old-fashioned, but there are these weird kind of outlying moments amongst it, right? There's this people doing cocaine and the party.
Yes.
I love that stuff. That stuff's
a lot of fucks in the script.
Yes. So many that they even remark upon it within the movie.
Yes, too many fucks in one exchange, yeah.
When Marion Cotillard says, "You just got an R rating," she's like, "Oh, two non-sexual fucks gets you an R rating, but that would say sexual fuck you just said there."
The MPAA will not like this movie.
Wait, Chris, have you ever had to deal with the MPAA in terms of defining whether or not...
Pie! He directed American Pie!
That's right.
Co-director for American Pie.
Yeah.
Did they try and slap an NC-17 on American Pie?
Yes, that was our first rating.
Right, because you had him fuck the pie in a different
that was an
orientation or whatever. Right,
there was an alternate shot in which he actually straddled it from above.
Right.
I don't think we ever contemplated that. However, you do get into these ridiculous conversations about like, well, okay, what if we remove one thrust from the pie? How about that?
Wait, but surely it wasn't only the pie that bothered them, right? Like there are actual sex scenes in that film.
A number of things. But there was, as they call it, the technical term is frame fucking. So we did have to do a bit of that in order to inch our way back to R.
And that's like literally how long the shot can last, right?
Yes.
I mean, right. Which angle you use, right?
Which angle? Can you take out 8 frames? Can you take out one pump? I mean, it's like the Hingle McCringleberry skit with the Key and Peele skit.
Right.
So wild.
Like you can't do the third pump or you get ejected.
Right. So they weren't like, we just want, I mean, I don't know, the foreign exchange student gets changed. Like, this just doesn't seem plausible. That was my mom's note after she saw American Pie.
Why would she change? Well, she has a good point.
Right. She was just like, I don't know, David. It felt kind of implausible to me. And I was like, I don't think that movie was really going for plausible.
That is a goof. Because
it's a goof.
Most people don't change down to full nudity at other people's houses.
In front of the mirror and spend a long time looking at themselves. Yeah.
Right. Anyway, but my mom, she rented American Pie in the year 2000 and watched it and gave me notes. So, that's a viewer. That's money in the bank.
Reported back to you. Yeah.
Wow, that was an elusive quadrant.
Chris, here's a question we've never thought to ask you. And you've been on the show. This is now your third time, including Patreon content.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, is it only his third time? This is outrageous.
Isn't it wild? Right? Is it only
crazy.
3?
I guess you're rarely in the Big Apple, Chris. But now we're on.
Well, no,
the
but
big
I want to get up there. I want to,
Yeah.
you know.
Oh yeah.
I want to be up there with the Emily Yoshidas of the world.
Yoshida just hit
Absolutely.
10.
10.
Outrageous.
Jeez, well, I can't do that. That'll take
10
years.
main feet.
Well, come on, don't lose hope. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so carry on, Griff.
But you're a good friend.
The question we never
of the
asked.
show. Right. The
I don't know
question
what-
Thank you. I'm
you've
proud
never
to be.
asked, we've never asked is because I feel like at several different points in the history of this podcast, maybe not recently, we've talked about the American Pie direct-to-video universe, and especially Eugene Levy's continuing role in them.
Oh, right. The Jim's dad's
His
Saga.
tenure.
right.
Right. That
yes.
Jim's dad continues to be this voice of sage wisdom to sexually
Right.
awkward young men who he should have no
Yeah.
relation to.
Well, actually, at this point, the government it's like those very special episodes where the government paid for it. The government pays us, pays Eugene Levy
Yes.
to represent,
just-
to be a sex educator.
Or
Yeah.
he's like, I'm here to open the book of love, like, or whatever. I'm trying to think of the most inventive. I will say, Griffin, Jim's dad
Yeah.
has a Wikipedia entry on the Heroes Wiki. So
Whoa.
he is considered a hero.
He is a hero of sexual health.
So, what was the question? I'm sorry.
What's the question? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
The question
No,
is...
I don't mean. I'm not trying to press you. I want to be here to answer.
You directed the first film. It has become this bizarrely long-running series with all these spin-offs and everything. Do you have any participation in the American Pie universe? Do you get checks when they release a 10th movie?
No, I don't.
No.
Wow, rude.
Paul and I don't at this stage.
Does Adam Hertz,
I hope so.
the credited
I-
screenwriter? Yes.
I definitely hope so because he is, he's the daddy of it all. Daddy.
He's the Jim's dad of the
Strange term.
franchise.
He's Jim's dad of the whole thing. We do sometimes get checks for American Pie 2 because we're executive producers by that stage.
Right.
But that is it.
American Pie 2, which I assume you had no actual involvement with.
No.
I will say one of the most anarchic theater experiences I've ever had. I must have been 15 years old, and I just remember pandemonium. People were just like, I don't know what's going to happen in this movie, but if you saw the last one, anything goes. People were just like bouncing off the walls.
Yeah, it could have been a black mass, I mean,
I was like 12. I was just at the cutoff. I remember campaigning my parents so hard to let me see it in theaters, and it was one of those things where it's just like, you might be a
too
little
dangerous.
too young. But I knew I was missing out. It was like watching all my
That movie-
friends go to see the Beatles at Shea Stadium. Like I was like, this isn't going to be the same. And I watched it a year later on VHS, and I was just like, I missed a cultural moment.
I'll say I was 15, and that movie was a little young. Like that movie was really for 12-year-olds. Like even at 15, I was like, I don't know about all this.
Oh my God, you guys are so young. This every time we
leave
talk
us
about this
alone.
kind of stuff, it reminds me.
Oh, come on, I'm old. I'm old as sin. I'm old
Come
as
on.
bones. I'm a pile of
The
ash.
show Bones.
Bag of Bones Sims. David's so old, he's gone into syndication twice over.
I'm so old that I'm just cashing Hart Hansen checks. That's right. I know the
old.
name of the creator of Bones. Get out of
Wow.
here.
David,
Yeah.
quick question.
Okay.
Just a quick casual question. We'll get back to the Great Allied Showdown in just a second.
Yeah, but shoot from the hip. What's up?
Just a real quick question. Probably will be a really easy answer, and we'll get back to the show.
Okay.
Is there something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals?
Right now, like during this time in our country's history with this pandemic?
Yes.
I
Let me
imagine.
Let me reframe the question. Is there anything in your life making you unhappy and or anything you feel like you're not accomplishing right now in January of 2021?
No, I feel totally and wholly fulfilled. There's definitely nothing bothering me. No. Look, Griff, I've got some anxieties. I'm sure you do too.
No, I'm good.
There's
I'm
some
doing
there's
well.
some things I might want to talk through.
So you need some help,
Yeah, maybe. It'd be nice to have a little bit of help.
but you wouldn't want like mediocre help or even good help. You'd probably want better help, right?
I would like some better help. Yes. The kind of service that might assess my needs, match me with a licensed professional therapist, and let me start communicating in under 48 hours.
Yeah, I mean, they're operating on Murphy-Nolte rules. And it's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's a professional counseling service done securely online.
We should do Walter Hill. Like, why not?
Yeah, let's climb that hill.
Absolutely. Climb the hill. All right. Yes, BetterHelp's great. They got a broad range of expertise, which might not be locally available in a lot of areas. You can log on to your account anytime, worldwide, send a message to your counselor.
Let's underline worldwide. I'm sorry. I know you got another big point to make, but we got a lot of international listeners, and sometimes they're bummed out that the services that advertise in our show are not available to them. And BetterHelp is available worldwide.
Exactly. And, you're going to get a timely, thoughtful response. You can schedule some weekly video or phone sessions. You don't have to sit in waiting rooms. It's more affordable than traditional offline counseling. Financial aid is available. There's all kinds of testimonials that you can check out on betterhelp.com/reviews. People giving you ideas of therapists that they like or, services that they enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, even Marion Cotillard couldn't find anything to question about this service.
Absolutely not. If you visit betterhelp.com/check, that's better HELP.com/check. You can join the over 1 million people who've taken charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. In fact, so many people have been using it that they're recruiting additional counselors in all 50 states.
50 nifty, United States.
Special offer for Blank Check listeners. You're going to get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/check. All right. Chris, you're here. You're not here to talk pie. You're not here to talk Jim's dad. You're not here to talk bones.
I wouldn't mind if we could talk a little bit about night eggs.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yes, but you are here to talk eggs. That's true.
Oof. Wow.
An ingredient in pie. But
has Ben? Have you got the promo queued up for?
I do. Here.
Might do a bit of an intro.
Yeah, please.
Let me just intro this because obviously we've lost a bit of momentum on night eggs with the pandemic. There's been a lot of talk about, there was the thing with Chrissy Teigen where she talked about eating night eggs.
Yeah.
A lot. She went to that well several times, I feel.
Yeah.
She made a video and everything. She kind
was
of
encroaching
really,
on the brand.
put a flag down
Yeah.
in a way that was upsetting for me.
I know. And we got into it with the lawyers. We had problems with Sam Jackson's windows.
They needed double insulation or whatever. There's too much. Too much.
It was an issue. It was an issue.
and then we did. We had a deal. We had a studio deal, and then it fell through. And then
okay, I should take some of the blame. I kept talking about giant horses, and I think we should get into that. But continue, Chris. Sorry.
No, it's okay. There were some budget questions, then we thought, okay, we got to go streaming now, and then we finally got a deal. And have you guys heard of a thing called Quibi? So that's what I'm really excited about right now.
I have some great news for you and some bad news. Great news. You have an in at Quibi. His name's David Sims.
You got a major in.
Bad
David
news.
is the founder, majority shareholder.
Bad news. Quibi's having a slight cash flow issue at the moment, but I'm working on turning it around.
That would explain why we've had some trouble kind of just getting down to brass tacks with them.
Right. Yeah. The phones are currently not I mean, they're plugged in, but there's no power being supplied to them. But we're going to figure it all out.
David, do you mind if I speak as your publicist here for a moment?
Sure, please.
Yeah, of course.
So as an official representative for Quibi, Chris, you should just understand. And first of all, we apologize for the delayed response. I think we can all say 2020 has been a wild year.
It's been crazy for everybody.
Quibi is in the middle of a pivot, I would say, much like the pivot from landscape to portrait mode while watching one of our classic turnstile videos. Quibi is sort of been pivoting as a company out of being existent.
Right.
So it's just a lot of tectonic plates moving. We're just sort of figuring things out. We're very committed to Night Egg still.
Thank you, Griffin. That explains a lot.
about,
Of course.
not hearing back. But anyway, in the meanwhile, Ben, I was feeling really badly. I was feeling like I was being a bad producer. And so what I did was put together a bit of an audio sizzle reel. I'll explain a bit afterwards, but I just want to see what you think of it.
Okay, I'm very excited.
He's screen sharing with us here.
Visionary filmmaker Ben Hosley announced his latest project, Night Eggs. In 2021, not even a global pandemic will prevent the world from experiencing night eggs. Night Eggs. All rights reserved, not associated with Chrissy Teigen's Night Eggs.
Well, and that's an important tag there that I think we should all really spotlight. Okay.
Yeah. So to explain, obviously this went out today on the net and has gone viral, and some people are saying that it sounds like a horror movie a little bit, like it sounds a little too intense. So that's why I put the outro, which kind of tells you that it's going to be fun too.
Lightens it
right
up.
There's kind of a end of an episode of a sitcom vibe to the right, I feel like I'm about to see the Gracie Films card or something.
Yeah,
I think it's good though. I think
it's
got a vibe.
Yeah,
it's got a
really
great
strong
vibe. The distortion on your voice, I'm assuming that's your voice.
No, that wasn't me. That was
okay.
People keep saying it's me doing different, kind of trying to sound like the trailer guy. But that's a real guy.
It was Don LaFontaine Jr.
You got LaFontaine Jr.?
You got LaFontaine Jr.
That guy mostly does cruise ships.
Yeah.
Yeah. So but the thing is, we're selling the sizzle, not the steak. It's like people still don't really know what it's about.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a smart approach to marketing the movie, because the film, of course, is a mystery. So why not sell a mystery with a mystery, being what is this fucking movie?
Right. It's like that episode of Entourage where they sell the movie off the trailer. No, sorry. Carry on, Ben. Go ahead.
Well, no, please. I mean, I love an Entourage anecdote. But
antidote, yes.
Yeah. I love an Entourage antidote. I like anything that can prevent Entourage from spreading.
But Chris mentioned the budget issue. So guys, I don't think I've talked about this on the show yet. I sort of built in this new sort of angle, which is that there's giantism. There's giant horses, but there's giant people. Rich people are now giant. Okay. So
it's like,
but not
if you're a fancy
9
person,
foot, 10 foot, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
It's not kind of huge.
It's
but it's they're double the size now. So essentially you have giants of Silicon Valley, literally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the
I didn't think about though how difficult it would be to sort of make that happen,
Ups the budget, sure.
It does. But I feel strongly about it. I do.
Yeah.
You feel like that's the kind of thing you'll walk out of a meeting over, where they're like, so the people have to be 9 feet tall, and you're like, I'm out of here.
It's like there's not just a carpool lane, there's a giant lane. It's just things like I feel like you gotta have.
A lot of people think just put the people are supposed to be giant closer to the camera, but then there are a lot of problems.
A lot of problems.
Fantastic.
But seriously, 2021. I mean, I know actually this is 2021.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
So
welcome to 2021, everybody.
Get ready.
Welcome,
This
everyone.
episode's coming out in 2021.
Once when I was a baby writer, just arrived in Hollywood, I went to a party and I met a girl whose job was to write taglines for like posters and movies, and I said, "Oh wow, interesting. So can give me an example of what's the work you're proudest of?" And she said, "Get ready for the ride of your life." That was her tagline, her big tagline.
Whoa.
It was not a come on, by the way, either.
It could have been interpreted that way, though.
I don't think it was, unless now that I think back, gosh, did I really miss out on something about 30 years ago?
Now, I have to confess, what is that the tagline for? Or is that just like...
She didn't say. She never said. Anyone
could use that.
I love a get ready tagline, too. It's just like, was it Ricky and the Flash? Get ready for Ricky and the Flash. And I always feel like, I'm not ready.
I'm sitting here
trying to get ready.
Get ready.
I don't even know how to get ready for this.
I'm seeing here that it was used for Total Recall. I don't know if that was the original.
I also, when I
maybe she
Googled
was
it, got some
stealing it.
Total Recall. But let's see what the actual tagline for Total Recall was. Not the Yes, it was "Get ready for the ride of your life."
Hey,
The only thing that I sort of mind more than a get ready tagline is X Studio cordially invites you to, because I always feel offended, because I feel like you're asking me to buy a ticket. You're not inviting me to anything. If you're inviting me to it,
That's a fair point. Like, you are not invited.
Where's the free ticket, and
right.
where's the food, and where's the party?
You are invited to buy a ticket.
You're cordially
right.
invited to
normal
pay me,
prices.
is what you're saying.
right. What they're really saying is like Columbia Pictures cordially puts you on the hook for $15.99.
Columbia Pictures cordially is pointing out that this film will be on sale.
Right.
For you.
I was going down a YouTube trailer rabbit hole last night, and I watched the trailer for Jingle All the Way, because I remember that having like a very funny misdirect teaser as a child, that they made it look like an action film and then subverted it.
Sure.
But that movie was produced by Chris Columbus, who was going to direct it, and then handed off the reins to Brian Levant, right, who did the Flintstones movies and Beethoven, I think.
Yes.
Right.
He did Beethoven 1. He did both Flintstones. He did Snow
Right.
Dogs. Did a lot of hits.
Yeah, and the trailer uses the very confusing from the director of Mrs. Doubtfire and the director of the Flintstones, which I think that's not fair play.
Double dealing.
It's not. It's not.
Right?
But you know,
I think if your producer is the director of a big hit film, you can't credit them as from the director. I think you can do the from the guys or from the people who brought you.
If you took it to court, they could be like, well,
it is from
this movie is
It's from him.
Christopher Columbus, who
Right.
directed Chris Columbus, not Christopher Columbus. Important distinction. And so you can't sue us on this, and I guess they'd be right.
But that kind of crediting makes it sound like Jingle All the Way is Christopher Columbus and Brian Levant doing the 5 obstructions, that it was a film of two directors, two titans wrestling control at every other scene.
That I would like to be cordially invited to see.
Yes, that I would watch.
Chris, I'll cordially invite you anytime. I'm just realizing, on top of all the World War II talk we were doing at the beginning of this, the last time you were on a main feed episode, Chris, was Lust Caution, which is also a World War II movie.
That's right. Yes.
And when you came on Patreon, it was to talk about Rogue One, a film that you wrote, which is
also,
a war movie.
It is a war movie. I just love war.
You've become one of our in-house resident war experts.
I hope that I will be cordially invited anytime a war springs up.
You will. But I'm curious, as we now dig into the deep end of the Great Allied Off 2021,
Yeah.
I'm curious, what for you do you find appealing about war films? Like, what are the central tenets of a good war film for you? What do you like in the genre? What do you aim to do when you've worked in the genre?
Well, I guess it's like the heightened emotionality, and the sort of the heightened everything comes into strong contrast, right? Ethically, morally. But I guess Rogue One is a war movie. But other than that, I haven't really worked on much. I guess Operation Finale. Okay, yeah. I mean, I think it's this greatest generation malarkey where it's like, people had lives then. They were much more living on a sort of a higher level of existence because of the stakes involved.
The stakes are high. It's like sports movies. It's a good thing to build a drama around because there's a game where there'll be a winner and a loser. Like, there's a natural denouement there. And even if you're not covering the end of a war in your movie, it's an environment where the stakes are incredibly high and everyone's pushed to their upper limits.
Yeah, I guess that's why there aren't many great cricket movies, eh, David?
Hey,
That's not true, Lagan.
Oh, really?
For example, have you never seen Lagan?
Oh, Lagan. I have not seen Lagan. Isn't it about
Chris,
20 hours long?
Chris, it's 3.5 hours. It's 3.5 brief hours. It might be 4 hours. It's 224 minutes long. Chris, please, I know you have children and a family, and you don't have 224 minutes to just throw around, but please watch Lagan. I think it's still on Netflix right now. It's so good. I love it every time I've watched it. I've watched it many times. I threw it on recently for Forky, and I was like, look, I know I've talked to you about this movie, and you always roll your eyes at the, 4-hour Bollywood cricket movie, but I promise you're going to like it. 5 minutes in, she was like, I am totally vibing with this. This rules. We watched it. I think we watched it over 2 days. Like we split it up, but it's the best. I will say, I remember, and this is a cherished memory of mine from when I was 10 years old. We were playing cricket in my primary school. And because it's a more advanced game, like I feel like you don't play it when you're really little. And I was really good at it. And the teacher in this first game we played said, the American kid is better than you at this. Like, he was like yelling at the Brits.
Shame.
And I was like, so proud of the fact that I was one, okay at a sport, and two, putting my English compatriots
I bet you could catch
their own
for one
sport.
thing.
I could catch and throw.
That reminds me of my first rugby practice when they didn't know I was American, and the coach stopped and said, "Stop! There's an imbecile in our midst," because I didn't know what a number 8 did. Anyway, Allied.
Allied. So set in Britain, at least.
How would you know that?
Well,
what?
Well, it's set mostly in Hampstead. It's set mostly in near where I grew up. It's a lot of shots of Hampstead Heath. But yeah, Allied. Robert Zemeckis' Griffin. What do you want to estimate? 18th film. Somewhere around there, right?
Yeah. I think he's made 20 or 21 in total. That's about 18.
Yeah.
I remember, as we've sort of talked about in this final period of Zemeckis that we're covering, the most recent period, post mocap. He's just constantly entertaining a lot of scripts. There just a couple times a year you will hear Zemeckis is circling this. He's interested in this. And then something ends up going. But I remember pointedly this being a Deadline story where it's like Zemeckis got the script. He loved it. He sent it to Cotillard and Pitt. They loved it. They sign on. They start filming in 10 weeks. Like it was like a rapidly moving train. It was just sort of this hot script, big movie stars attached, big director attached. Paramount bought it for a lot of money, and they like ran right into it, positioned it, big holiday season Oscar play, and then it just sort of totally disappeared, which I think, as we've sort of alluded to, partially because it's a movie that weirdly had the opposite mojo of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Right? Like, that's a movie where Brad Pitt's married. He does a movie with one of the most beautiful movie stars in the world. And everyone can't get over the idea of like, oh my God, did they sleep together? Did it end the marriage or not? And it becomes this press hullabaloo. And people thought it was going to doom the movie because historically it does in the sort of classic like proof of life kind of way. Yeah. And then it didn't. It was a major hit. And then this movie, it felt like there was a lot of gossip around it, like, as soon as they started filming. And it was very unclear whether there was any merit to it or if it was just the kind of basic gossip construction that happens whenever two incredibly attractive people work together. But it felt like it sullied the movie in some kind of way, not the positive way. It didn't help the movie save 155 souls.
It didn't land the movie in the
it didn't land the movie.
East River.
Exactly.
But
it was in the Hudson, Chris.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. You would never try and land a plane in the East River. There's a bunch of bridges.
It's too gross.
And it's too gross. As far as I know, and I sort of dug around about this, that was all not true. Like it was just, they were like, well, it has to be this, right? And I think it just was not. I mean, their marriage fell apart for more ordinary, personal, dysfunctional reasons.
And Cotillard is still with Kane. I mean, her marriage is still intact.
Right. And as Chris was about to say, they have no chemistry in this movie, right, Chris?
They don't seem to like each other that much.
I would say, all right, look, Griffin, look. Okay, I got it. I'm going to say, you liked this movie when it came out, and you famously nominated it for Best Screenplay at the Blankies.
Yes, sir.
And I scoffed.
You went, what?
I went, what? What are you talking about? Allied for a screenplay. I'll stand by the fact that I don't know if the screenplay, but we'll talk about that. But when I saw this movie at the time, I was kind of bummed out by it. I thought it was a little flat. Trump had just gotten elected. I didn't want to deal with it, and that was
so you
that.
were like too amped. You were too excited. It was kind of
right. I just wanted to be outside, waving
with
flags.
The people.
Yeah, no. And so I feel like I probably didn't give this movie a fair shake. I want to say there's a lot I admire about it. I think it's interesting. I enjoyed watching it again. I don't know that I came around to like Allied triumphalism, but I liked it.
But did you get ready for it? Did you get ready for it?
Did you get ready for the Allied of your life?
I believe the tagline was "The enemy is listening," which is fine.
That's inspiring,
right? But Pitt and Cotillard, yeah. I don't know. They're not jumping off the screen to me. Two beautiful people, two wonderful to look at folks.
Look, I'm going to try probably in vain to mount my argument for this, but it is pointedly, I think, a very bottled movie, right? Which is one of the things that I think works against it. As you say, the idea of doing a classical World War II movie is to be able to use these operatic emotions in front of a grand sort of backdrop, with these high stakes and high passions and high tensions and all of that. And this is very much a movie about emotionally reserved people, which puts it at odds with the sort of genre that it is homaging and the era of films I would say it is homaging. But I also think this is a movie that is so much about not being able to read people, and to a certain degree, rather than making this more of a tragic romance where the first 40 minutes are just, oh my God, can you believe the fucking tension between these two people? The chemistry is off the charts. And then the rest of the movie becomes the tragedy of, look at how it all falls apart. I think it's deliberate. You can argue whether it works against the ultimate goals of the movie. It is deliberate that they are never explosively electric with each other, because the movie is about never being able to totally gauge where they stand.
Well, there is that weird childbirth scene.
Wild.
Holy shit.
Which is bananas.
Yes.
Marion, so it's for those not familiar with this movie, Marion Cotillard gives birth during the Blitz while the hospital is being hit by bombs.
They're rolling her out on a bed. She births their child on the streets.
Yes, and she's like, "Look at me, this is me before God." Like she has a whole monologue,
right? Which definitely seems a bit sus, actually, in retrospect.
Right. Yes, well, that's
absolutely
right.
It's that's the moment.
Giant red flag.
But yes, also, like, I think she says she's part of the Assassin's Creed in that monologue. She's spilling a lot of beans in that monologue.
You have to find the apple. Enter the animus. She also pulls Brad Pitt close to her right after the baby is born and starts sharing a lot of 9/11 theories she has. But it is, in retrospect, yes, it is an absolute warning sign that the first thing she can say during a bomb strike after giving birth to a child is like, "Look at me, I'm too exhausted to lie now."
Yeah.
Like, that's essentially what she's saying. Like, you can trust me because I don't have the energy to pretend to be someone else right now.
Well, this is, I mean, it made me think about childbirth scenes in general in movies, which I think are never, ever, ever realistic, right? There's a trope, there's a series of tropes.
Right. It strikes me, it's so impossible to actually realistically depict childbirth that instead they just go by the book most of the time, right? It's like, this is how we do this in Hollywood, so we're just going to do this.
For sure. This is going deep, but my wife had an emergency C-section for our first baby, which was in London, by the way, at John and Lizzie's hospital, birthing ward. And although that was very stressful, I also was secretly relieved I didn't have to go through the movie scene where your loved one is screaming in pain.
Right. The 24 plus hours, perhaps. Right. Yes.
So what is that amount to is that I'd only been told by movies like what childbirth is like, and it would seem bad enough, but I'm sure it's actually much more painful. And also, of course, the baby is always better looking than a baby is. When they hand Marion Cotillard the baby, I'm like, oh, that baby's 8 months old. Yeah, okay, you put some goo on it, but.
Yeah, Hollywood has some sort of unfair casting processes when it comes to newborn infants. They definitely.
I do want. It must be such a pain in the ass to corral a newborn. Have you ever had to deal with a baby, Chris?
Do they have to audition? Did they have to send a tape in?
Well, like send photos, or video or whatever.
But your audition is actually the birth of the child, because then you want to get as close as possible to what the baby's like as the newborn. And then
that's
you
like the first
30 of them.
camera test, right? That's like the old Hollywood, like they pay to put you on a camera test to shop around. Yeah.
What was the famously bad CGI baby? Was it American Sniper? I think was
American Sniper has
American Sniper is like a puppet.
Plastic baby,
right?
Yes.
It's just like a straight up doll.
Then Bradley Cooper drops at one point and nobody even notices. It's not that bad, but it's pretty bad.
Right. The later Twilight films, you were pre-baby.
That's right.
I was pre-baby.
You were pre-baby.
There's a very odd CGI baby, which
Renesmee. Yes.
Show some respect, please, David. Put some respect on that name.
It's just a name I struggle with. Renesmee. There you go.
Well, it's obvious. It's a combination of Renee and Esme, obviously. So,
of course. It's very obvious. But that one's an odd example because they built the practical baby first. And then they made it CGI, and you see this CGI baby, you go, that thing is so frightening looking. Why wouldn't they use the practical? And then you see the practical.
Then you see the practical baby.
80 times more frightening. It is absolutely the single most cursed thing ever designed for a movie.
The practical baby actually created the Conjuring universe when it was created. Yes, that all came out of that baby.
I remember I got speaking of that particular movie, I got a call about. Because I was kind of one and done on the Twilight saga, and they called me about the next movie just to say, like, there's this scene where maybe you could sort of help us with the writing of it. Is there a way that you could make it like less kind of scary and creepy that Jacob immediately falls in love with this baby? And I said no.
No, that's just a tough needle to thread.
Guess what? That's an impossible concept to get across. That's like, the only medium in which that could possibly work is in a novel in which people can interpret it in their mind and adjust it however is least objectionable for them. You cannot visually put that on screen. It is such an absolute breaking point for the franchise.
It is,
huge. The tallest order. I mean, it's like a Ben Hosley Night Eggs rich person sized order. 15 feet tall. Yeah.
Well, listen, that's going to be fine. Sorry, you're implying.
That'll be fine. Right. Yeah. No, that's a short order.
I mean, it'll like the Hobbits and, they've perfected it at this point, right?
You just saying the Hobbits, that's all we needed to hear. Of course, they perfected it. You're right.
Bring, bring, bring.
A phone call.
David,
I'm picking up the phone.
Try to show a little excitement. You don't want to answer the phone with that kind of energy. Okay.
Hello.
Bonjour.
Oh, hello.
C'est moi.
Is it you, Marion Cotillard?
Marion Cotillard.
Oh my God, it's so nice to hear from you. Academy Award winner, Marion Cotillard, star of Allied, of course, the film we're discussing this week.
May we? And I do not mean to start a conspiracy.
Oh, of course not. You'd never do anything like that.
But David, do you really know what's in your multivitamin?
Look, Marion, this is what freaks me out about multivitamins. They could have
freaks me out too.
Sugars and GMOs and synthetic fillers and artificial colorants and animal byproducts like sheep's wool or gelatin from hooves and hides. Like, these are the kind of ingredients that pop up in multivitamins.
No, pas bien.
It is not good. You're right. You're right to say it. But there is one option: Ritual. It's not your typical multivitamin. I don't know if you know about it.
I like atypical things.
You do, yes. It's got a clean, vegan-friendly formula. It's made with key nutrients in forms your body can actually use. There's no shady extras. Okay. Put it this way.
Okay.
When you take a Ritual multivitamin, you will regret Rien. All right. Okay. Listen. All right. It's formulated with key nutrients. It's got vitamin D3. It fills gaps in the diet. It tastes pretty fresh. It's got a delayed release, so it dissolves later in less sensitive areas of the stomach. You can take them without food, essentially. Sometimes those vitamins, they mess with you.
Does it melt steel beams?
Let's swerve away from that and instead highlight that they've got a visible supply chain, so you can see where your nutrients are coming from. It's available for women, for men, for teens, for all life stages. It's delivered to your door every month with free shipping always. You can start, snooze, cancel your subscription anytime. And if you don't like it, within your first month, they'll refund your first order.
Will George W. Bush organize my subscription?
I don't think so. I don't know why you're bringing him up, but here's what
I'm
I do want
just
to tell you,
asking
Marion.
questions. I'm just asking questions. I'm not making any statements. I'm just asking questions.
Look, you deserve to know what's in your multivitamin. That's why Ritual is offering our listeners 10% off during your first 3 months. Visit ritual.com/blankcheck to start your ritual today.
J'adore ritual.
So, Allied. Guys, let's talk Allied. Allied is a 2016 war thriller made by Robert Zemeckis. It was written by Stephen Knight, who I would say is one of Hollywood's most unpredictable screenwriters.
Yeah. Can we talk about Knight? Can we unpack Knight? Can we have a Hard Day's Night for a moment? Yes.
Yes, because he's written some
very
screenplays.
prolific. I looked
Very
at
prolific.
Yeah.
Yes.
When Serenity came out, his third film as a director, which I feel like was one of the more clowned upon films last year or 2019, but a film that I've always defended for its bug nuts nature.
It's ambitious.
It's a wild, ambitious movie.
I would say it makes some mistakes, but I like the ideas, or I like what he's going for.
I don't disagree. I will give you that Serenity makes some mistakes.
It does.
But it's a movie I ultimately think you have to applaud its wild ambition in many ways, and also a movie where I've always contended it plays a lot better if you know the ending going in. But when that movie came out, someone on the Blank Check subreddit posted like the argument for doing a Stephen Knight series at some point, and saying like he's got one of the weirdest blank checks ever, in that his guarantor is Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And I was like, did Stephen Knight win Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
No.
Did he self-finance a movie? He created it. Stephen Knight created the British version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and then became a very acclaimed Tony screenwriter. And then he wrote fucking Dirty Pretty Things and got nominated for an Oscar, and has had this like strong career, working a lot of big directors, directed 3 movies of his own.
Do you want to know what the initial title for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was before they came up with that very effective title, I would say?
That's $1 million, ain't it?
For one, they're competing for £1 million, but also it was going to be called Cash Mountain.
Oh boy!
Oh shit, that's better.
I mean,
Are you ready
sense
to
you're
climb
climbing a
up
mountain,
Cash
right?
Mountain?
Yeah, right. Anyway, it's just that's like a very 30 Rock title. That's all.
Yeah.
So I mean, presumably there would have been like a pyramid of cash.
Yeah, there would have been some pyramid motif. Right?
The host would dress like a
pyramid
mountaineer. He would have like ropes.
Right, rather than the classic graphic of the amounts getting crossed off, instead the graphic would be a money pyramid and a little mountaineer with a pickaxe, and he would just get higher and higher up the mountain.
Who doesn't get the money?
Yeah, the goat just eating dollars. Cash Mountain.
But his big breakthrough was that he wrote Dirty Pretty Things, which is a very good movie, a Stephen Frears film, and got a surprise screenplay nomination at the Oscars for it. Which, that's like that. It got no other nominations. That movie kind of, snuck in. I like Eastern Promises a lot. That was another early screenplay of his.
Good movie.
That's a movie I really am a fan of. Then he kind of goes away for a while.
He directs a movie, Hummingbird, that doesn't really exist, with Jason Statham.
Right, but he comes back that year, Hummingbird. He also writes Closed Circuit, which doesn't exist as well, the Eric Bana CCTV thriller. He does wrote and directed Locke, which is wonderful.
Wow, I didn't realize Hummingbird and Locke are the same year. That's wild.
And Ben, he creates Peaky Blinders.
Right.
Good show.
which, the drama of course, 19 teens Birmingham gangsters that everybody loves, that I think is like still on the air. It's one of those shows that's just never going to die.
This guy has like two careers jammed into one. This reminds me of when I realized that I thought Brie Larson and Alison Brie were the same person, and I was like, wow, she's got such a huge career.
Where did she find the time? Yeah. But then you look at this next run post Locke, right? Locke is like a movie that makes his mark as a director. And you go like, oh, maybe now he's going to like transition to being more of a director, writing his own material, scrappy little, actor-based indie films like this. And then he just does like 100-Foot Journey, right? Disney Lassie Hallstrom cooking movie. He does Seventh Son, which is like a disastrous Universal fantasy franchise starter. Pawn Sacrifice, the Ed Zwick, Bobby Fischer movie. He does Burnt, which was his script forever. And for 10 years, that was like this script where like Fincher almost made it with Keanu Reeves.
Yes.
There were always like big pairings, and then it finally gets made with Bradley Cooper. John Wells doesn't exist.
I would argue, though, not a bad script. It has some spicy scenes.
Clearly.
When you see it, you're like, yeah, I could see how this was a hot thing. Like, I could see how directors were into this.
Everyone considered making it. And then Allied, which is like, here's my spec script, bidding war, 3 major talents come up, Paramount Pictures gives it a big opening weekend, and it disappears. And then since then, weird, like, he writes The Girl in the Spider's Web, he directs Serenity, and he is now, of course, writing Lockdown, the Doug Liman COVID-based heist movie starring Anne Hathaway, Chiwetel Ejiofor, David Sims, and Olivia Craig.
Yeah, of course. David Sims is in there. Of course, you're forgetting that he created C, the Apple TV drama set in the future where everyone's blind that Jason Momoa was in.
This guy it really just writes and writes. I want his writer drugs so that I can do as much stuff.
I'm sorry, I also have to mention... Yes, Taboo. He created the British Victorian crime drama Taboo with Tom Hardy and Tom Hardy's father, Chips Hardy.
Chips Hardy. But also,
love him.
His
name's Chips.
He wrote the Angry Scrooge Who Fucks version of Christmas Carol last year.
Yes. Guy Pearce was, I believe, right? Was Scrooge, yes.
I mean, it's a very odd career, yes.
But here's the other thing. Allied, which he is solely credited for, and I'm seeing here on Wikipedia that he got a Blanky nomination for writing. Incredible. Is based on like a story he heard. Like it's like one of those things where he's like, oh, like a friend of my dad's told me this story. No, my aunt of like a guy who fell for a French woman, and they, he knocked her up, and she gave birth, and then found out she was a German spy. And you're just like. It's not like this is a concrete story that there's documentation of. No. It's just like a crazy story from the war that he heard.
And it definitely feels like it is structured like a fable in that way. And I have to make it clear, when I laud this film's screenplay, it is mostly that I find the structure of it incredibly interesting.
I like the structural idea of it.
Yeah, I understand others do not like it as much as me, but structurally, this movie has some interesting ideas. I right off the bat, if we're digging into the meat, I love that this movie spends ostensibly 45 minutes on the epilogue, right? That there's a lot of time where you're essentially embedded in the early stages of this relationship, and it's like an ice cold open, right? I mean, you have this weird like. We've talked about most Zemeckis movies open with complicated tracking shot, getting you into an environment or getting you out of an environment and giving you all the details of the character's life before anyone speaks. And this movie has like 10 minutes before a word is really kind of uttered. And it just opens with like black, white title cards, and then Brad Pitt lands a parachute in the middle of the desert in the middle of nowhere.
Love that.
Right.
Opening shot, his feet, floating into the screen.
Right.
Into the frame.
That's a nice conceit.
Right, just sort of silence, no score.
You're in Lawrence of Arabia territory for about 3 minutes.
Right, and this guy has literally just dropped into the movie, into the middle of the desert, in the dunes, and then a car drives up, and they sort of have the silent exchange and handoff of objects. And there's something kind of cool to like starting with no information, you know,
Right.
other than
The only
that's a weird
information is-
entrance.
Yeah, and then the only thing he's told is your wife will be wearing a purple dress, and it's basically like show up, know how to act, and you're gonna have to kiss a beautiful woman and take her upstairs, essentially.
Right.
Great. I love. I mean, of course, this I like. Chris, a couple of things. One, I feel like you have not actually weighed in with your take on Allied, and two, what do you think of the opening?
Well, so first of all, disclaimer: I'm in the tank for Bobby Z. I'm working with him now, and not just
That's true.
but I like him very much. So
You're currently whittling a screenplay for him. Is that fair to say?
I am, and I'm also producing him as well. So I'm all around
you're,
him.
You're
I'm all up in
trying
his,
to turn the screenplay into a real movie.
Indeedy. It is called Pinocchio. It is about a boy. No, a puppet who wants to be a boy. I forgot for a second.
Interesting. That's an interesting twist.
Boy
Yeah.
wants to be a puppet. Who can remember?
It's an original idea that I came up
Yeah,
with.
sure. Yeah.
Right.
A
Your
spec
aunt
script.
told you about it.
So,
Yeah.
but my take on it is partly informed by my liking of the man, also informed by the fact that my dad was OSS, and so I grew up with him watching World War II movies and his constant critique of these movies, and so I've got him in my head kind of. It was just no fun actually watching a World War II movie with him, because he'd be like, that is not the right divisional ensign for insignia for that Panzer division and stuff. Which
Right.
Like, fine. But I do also really like the opening shot of this. I like the opening moments. I do think it is quite old fashioned, in as much as I think the modern mind says, well, what? But why did they wait to tell him what she was going to wear until he got into the car? Like, did they not brief him at all in advance? Like, wouldn't it have been more sort of technologically ahead of its time? Actually, but interestingly, I guess a lot of this movie depends on the fact that nobody has the internet.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
and so you can't Google somebody's picture.
I was going to say this
Right.
too, and it makes perfect sense that this is a movie based on a story he kind of heard from somebody. But this is very much a movie that operates from top to tail in the world of movie logic, right? I mean, pretty much every decision that everyone makes and how they go about it and the processes that are presented to them are all movie logic, where you have to accept that that's the way it's happening because that's the way the movie wrote it.
Yeah, like, wouldn't you go meet your newfound wife in private first, and then she'd give you a little bit of a pep talk ahead of time, and then you'd go to the cafe or the
Well, you go to
bar.
the roof afterwards.
Yeah, you go to the roof.
Everything
roof
only
action.
happens the way it does because it would make for, in theory, a more engaging scene in a movie, right?
Yes.
I mean, you're absolutely correct. They would meet in private somewhere. Even if they have to go to that restaurant, they would find a way to have her step out or meet him in the bathroom or some shit. But instead, you get this weird, disorienting cold open, and you get him walking in, eyeballing the silent exchange of the two of them looking at each other and having to sort of go like, this is now an arranged marriage. We're now jumping into the deep end.
Yeah. We're in the world of stylish choices and also like heavily elusive to the to older movies. Like she literally says, "I've loved you since Casablanca," right at one point.
Pretty early on.
And so this is the world we're in, and if you can get ready for that ride, get ready for the ride of your life, I would say.
I am trying to get ready for the rest of my life, of course.
Yeah.
This is the other thing I feel like we need to mention. I say right off the bat, 1 hour into the episode, but right off the bat, I think we need to acknowledge, I feel like a lot of the complaints I hear about this movie stem from the visual look, that he is making a very old-fashioned movie, that it operates on this sort of like classic kind of 40s romantic movie logic, but he's using a lot of CGI. And obviously the films surrounding this are more like classic Zemeckis-y showcase movies, right? Like The Walk is pretty much a movie built entirely around we can reconstruct this thing and recreate this thing. JD has talked about it at length, about how that movie is clearly trying to work past a sort of literal evocation of a real space and more sort of storybook kind of dreamlike representation of a place. And I feel like he is using digital technology in this movie, not just how much digital backdroppery there is, and clear like, color correction, and even just their faces look a little mocappy at times. It is a movie where it feels like he's using CGI like how do I even put this? I feel like he's weirdly using CGI to approximate old-fashioned visual trickery, right? Like it's like the way he's using virtual backdrops in this is like it's rear projection or like it's matte paintings.
Yes.
So the same way that the way he's sort of touching up their faces feels like it's gauze on the lens or something. You know,
it is painterly, you might say.
Yes.
But give me a little grain. Like I know this is the most boring complaint these days, but like if you're making a throwback movie, I would enjoy some, not it looks a little flat and digital sometimes. That's not the end of the world.
No.
These are handsome people. I like to look at them. I think the first act of this movie is pretty arresting. Like I basically dig it. Like
the mystery of
all
it.
This stuff is just good. I like how stripped away it is, stripped down it is. I like that we barely need to know their names. We barely need to know if anything they're saying is real. I like that the mission is pretty direct. We're gonna shoot that guy. I like Casablanca. Who doesn't? I came here for the waters.
The first act of this movie is like the middle of Castaway in how sort of stripped down and sparse it is. The tools he's using for a guy who's been known to use a lot of flash and use a lot of sharp dialogue.
Right.
Yeah, the dialogue, not tippy top, I think.
I can't disagree.
Yeah,
It certainly
that's the thing.
gets a little ropey at times. But I also think the movie wisely does not rely on dialogue too much.
It doesn't
It
require...
relies on a lot of looks.
Yeah. Brad doesn't have to speak too much French.
Yes, it's not his strong suit. It's a look movie for me. I mean, when we did Manchurian Candidate on the show and talked about like the value of Demi doing a Manchurian Candidate remake is his sort of subjective camera, right? His whole visual style of looking characters straight in the eye when they speak works very well with that material because it's a movie about trying to look someone in the eyes and figure out whether or not they're on the level, whether or not they can be trusted, which version of a person you're talking to, this and that. I think the way he's using movie stardom in this movie, and I'm not saying this is like a meta movie about movie stardom, but he pointedly cast two ginormous stars, right? And two people who have their own sorts of chemistry. I do think it is a movie about performance in a way that is aided by having two people who are that innately arresting, even in a movie that is trying to tamper down their natural charisma. Because so much of the movie is just like, I don't know, she really seems like she's on the level, right? But then also, this is Marion Cotillard. She can play whatever you ask her to play. You know?
Yes. I think
guys seem
she's
wildly
certainly
unconvinced. Yeah.
Well, look, I mean, I remember when I interviewed him, Zemeckis was very much like she was the only choice. And like, she has the look of an old,
she does.
European movie star, right? I mean, it's what helped her endure in Hollywood, I think, after she won this sort of early surprise Oscar. I don't know what to say about her performance in this movie.
Does she act as well in English as she does in French?
I think she definitely acts better in French. I think she's a good English language actor, but I think she's certainly next level in France. In French, in her native tongue.
Usually when she's in an English language movie, like the way Nolan uses her, or what are some other? Come on, give me Public Enemies. Yeah, like she is good at playing like mystery women. These very dramatic, sort of leap off the screen figures, right? And then you see her in Rust and Bone, or you see her in 2 Days, One Night, right? The French
Very Long
movies
Engagement, yeah.
and you're like, oh my God, this is such a natural, like, sort of human performance. Like, and you rarely see that from her in a Hollywood movie. Now, is that because Hollywood just looks at her and is like, oh my God, va va voom? Like, possibly. Yes.
I think there's some degree of that. I mean, certainly, like, Nolan kind of uses her in that kind of classical bombshell sort of way.
Right.
But then you look
Nine
at her,
is another one.
right. But I'm looking at other things here too, and it's like the immigrant is sort of asking her to play old Golden Age movie star.
She's great in that. That's sort of the right vibe, because that's like an old fashioned movie. She's playing an immigrant, obviously, so it makes sense that her faculty with English is not much, and like that. That's a great performance.
She's absolutely one of my favorite actors alive, even if she's not someone where I'm like, oh, she's given my 5 favorite performances of the last decade. She's someone I always find very engaging, and I think she has a really strong command over her screen presence. And as you said, she can do things like Rust and Bone and 2 Days, One Night, where she's like speaking in her own language, very stripped down, very elemental, very behavioral. Or she can be used in that Assassin's Creed way where she's like, what do you want me to play? You want me to play like an ingenue, a femme fatale? I'm like mystery woman who's classy and makes your exposition sound less silly? Done, And this movie's sort of the midpoint between those things. I mean, obviously more in the classical bent, but you also get another thing I like about this movie is that a lot of it takes place in other languages. Like, that is a threshold that I thought was really going to be broken after Inglourious Bastards, where that movie was such a big hit, and like probably 1/3 of that movie is in English, and mainstream American audiences went and supported a movie that is like largely spoken in German and French. And I thought, like, oh, finally, now if people are making period films in foreign countries, they will actually make the film where people are swapping, going back and forth between a couple languages, speaking natively as they would in any given scene. Like, for example, The Walk is a terrible example of French people who all only speak English to each other because they want the movie to play in America, and the justification in the script is, oh, come on, let's speak in English. I'm trying to improve my English.
Right, of course. That actually, when they said that, I completely understood, and that made everything make sense.
Right, but I like that this movie, it's like you get a lot of scenes of her speaking in French, him speaking less well in French. It allows her a certain comfort.
Curiously, she speaks English to the German attaché at the embassy. That was odd to me.
That's where the rule, I guess, is just thrown out the window, where it's like, look, let's just all speak Galactic Basic here. If we've got 3 languages in the room, but yes,
but actually they sort of they complicate matters as well by saying, oh, Brad Pitt doesn't speak English; he only speaks French.
Speak German.
So,
right, yes.
So curiously, they're speaking English seemingly out of caprice. To
be mean, right?
Yeah,
right. That's how they get away with that.
Anyway.
Brad Pitt,
Pitt, sure.
I would say 2011. He has this dynamite year that's sort of the pinnacle of this whole era of his career that's been so exciting, where he has The Tree of Life, he has Moneyball, and of course he has Happy Feet too.
Right.
And that's just three great performances.
Yeah, he should have won 3 Oscars that year.
Exactly. Best actor,
best actor in an animated film. Yeah.
Yes, best supporting krill. Yeah.
And then after that, he's still like, I would just say he enters this phase where he's just a raggedy guy. So you got like Killing Them Softly, World War Z, 12 Years a Slave, The Counselor, Fury, this, By the Sea, The Big Short. This is this whole period where even in World War Z and this, where he's a marquee idol, he's kind of like quiet and grumpy and sort of mumbly, and then like also just seems very drawn to playing these like really raggedy guys in supporting roles, popping up and stuff, being weird. It feels like he's working through stuff. Obviously his marriage was falling apart, it turns out, but go ahead. Sorry.
That's a part of it. I think it was also like him finding his real zone as an actor. As you said, like 2011 was like his most successful year creatively, right? And he's starting to find the roles he can fit into as well. But I also think there's a narrative that we see a lot talking about movie stars on this show, where guys who are just like otherworldly beautiful kind of can't wait until they start losing a little bit of their pretty. You know, for a guy like Brad Pitt, I think he views like the wrinkles starting to come in as a gift, because they can still make a movie like Allied where you give him an $80,000 haircut and a perfect suit and he looks great and he's got the cheekbones, but he is now a little more weary, you know? And so it allows him to play unsavory people rather, but it also allows him to play, you know, sort of broken down former golden boys. Which I think, as you said, he just runs with. He wants to play people who have some kind of axe to grind, chip on their shoulder, something they're holding on to tightly, you know?
Yeah. I think like when he does Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he actually sort of emerges from that a bit. I mean, he still has the broken downness, but he's having fun with it, as opposed to there's something a bit medicinal about when a guy's like, now I'm going to play the broken man, and it's going to be really sad.
Just his performance in Allied does feel like he's like, I'm going to tie both arms behind my back and see how I do. I don't actually think this is a bad performance. I think at the end, it is deeply felt what's happening to him. You know, I don't think, you know, it does not feel like he's like sleepwalking through this movie in the slightest.
I agree.
But it is interesting how insanely reserved he is for so much of, you know, how resistant he is to turn on the charm button.
Yes.
Right.
You hire a movie star with such innate charm pointedly to say, now can you actively work to suppress all of that charm? I only want the bare minimum charm coming through just to keep people engaged watching you on screen. I think I've said this before in the show, but my sister, who is 9 years younger than I, and so she kind of came of age as Pitt was transitioning into his clenched period. When I took her to see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, she turned to me, she went like, I didn't know Brad Pitt was such a movie star. And it was such a funny thing where it's like she's grown up with Brad Pitt being one of the dominant like movie stars in the culture, and she's seen a handful of his movies, but they were always him playing kind of angry, clenched, or closed off or bottled in some sort of way. And that was like the first movie she had seen in her lifetime, having not seen the Ocean's movies, too young for them. That where she was like, oh, he can be this charming? Like, he can look this good and be this alluring? And yeah, it's like, that's why he slam dunk won the Oscar, because people were just like, okay, now he's like taken everything he's learned from his serious sojourn and brought it back to him being like the sexiest dude in the world. And this movie, Allied, is absolutely in like the dead center nadir of those 2 points.
What are your pit thoughts, Chris?
My pit thoughts. So a little pit stop. I think he's very intent on not having fun here, and maybe that makes it less fun for us.
Yes, this is not really a fun movie.
No,
the beginning is
Definitely
a little
not.
fun, and then after that, it's surprisingly unfun.
I like how sad this movie is. I could never argue it's fun. I don't think it's a corker.
It's sad.
Well, what I mean, yes, Marion Cotillard shoots herself in the head in front of her husband, but is that really sad?
Does happen. It does happen. While their baby
and don't forget
sits
her
in a
baby.
car. Yeah, her baby's right there. Yeah.
But it's happy because he's going to be okay.
Yeah, he's going to go to Medicine Hat.
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
Oh no, David. We're getting Zoom bombed, and they didn't even take the time to ring. They just interrupted. They opened a window. No.
It's the classic joke, right? Knock, knock.
Who's there? No.
Or I did it the wrong way. I did it the wrong way, didn't I? It's who's there interrupting cow. Right, that's what it is.
We should say, I mean, I think our listeners are probably perplexed. They have no idea who this is that just Zoom bombed us. But of course, this is the first cineast cow.
Yes, is that right? Now we're officially dubbing movie The Cineass cow.
And the first Cineass cow. I'm not trying to start beef with Kelly Reichardt. I'm a big fan. But we did technically have the first Cineass cow, right? I mean, she's tried to push this idea of her having the first cow of the art house cinema, but we really kind of had the first.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of feels like you're trying to start beef, the tone you're taking.
Hey, I'm looking. The first Cineass cow is getting uncomfortable with all this beef talk.
Yeah, geez. Okay, no one's getting eaten. It's nice to see you, Cineass cow. I'm sure you're here to talk about Movie.com, the curated streaming service that shows exceptional films from around the globe.
I mean, Cineass cow only brings good tidings and is more an encouragement for us to talk about Movie and the films that are currently on there right now. And I'm just looking at this homepage, David, right?
Yeah.
I'm looking at like film of the day at the time that we're recording, right? New movies being added every day. Here are a couple of the ones that went up this week. Dance of Reality, the Jodorowsky film.
Yeah, Jodorowsky. Yeah, a recent one.
Ghost in the Shell, the original cut.
Great movie.
The Immigrant, James Gray, one of your favorites.
We'll do it on the pod one day. These are all things we could do on the pod one day.
But I'm also looking here. They got Fake It So Real, the Robert Greene documentary. Robert Greene, one of my favorite documentary filmmakers. I haven't seen that one. That's a blind spot to fill in. Got Atlantics.
Great movie.
Excuse me, Atlantics, the documentary short that inspired the feature film.
I want to shout out Distant Voices Still Lives, the Terrence Davis movie. I'm a huge fan of that movie. One of my favorites of all time. Every day movie premieres a new film, right? You know, they that's the whole thing. They're hand selected. They drop a movie every day and they add a movie. So it's like a little forever film festival happening on your TV, on your computer, on Movie.com.
On whatever your smart devices are. There's a lot of compatibility with Movie across different devices. I'm looking here. They got a bunch of the Suzanne Pitt animated films. Do you know Susan Pitt?
Not really. I mean, I know by name, yes, but not by. I haven't really seen them.
Incredible animation, independent animation director, who died a couple years ago and has a great body of work. And I'm looking here, and they got like 7 of her movies, 7 great.
They have a
shorts.
deep archive. They've got all kinds of stuff in the library too. They have the 30-day, concept, but they also got a lot of other stuff. It's great. You can watch it in 190 countries. They've got all kinds of cinema from all around the globe. They have 10 million members. You can screen and download movies anytime on any screen or any device ever. You'll never see an ad, and you can try it for free for 30 days at movie.com/check. That's mubi.com/check. It's a whole month of great cinema for free. It's a really good service. I love Mubi.
The bench is so deep. These are just like 5 random titles we cited upon loading up the homepage 5 seconds before recording this ad. There's always
I always
fun.
like doing a movie ad for that very reason.
And look, film of the day right now, at the time we're recording this, something called Ham on Rye. That sounds...
Ham on Rye.
Have you seen it?
No, I've heard a lot of good things about it. It's a movie that came out in 2020. It's maybe technically Festival 2019, but was much discussed, and I need to catch up with it.
I was going to say, that's a perfect David Sims title.
I do love a sandwich.
Yeah. So let's all watch Ham on Rye and hold the beef. You know what I'm saying? Out of respect to the first Cineass cow.
I'm saluting.
Filmmaking wise, this does feel like him using the tools from Castaway in a very different type of story, but it has that sort of inherent loneliness to it that I think Castaway has. For a guy who's so much about energy, right? Like Zemeckis is such a kinetic filmmaker in whatever genre he's working in, and his movies are usually very fast-paced and are about the sort of back and forth between the performers, whether they're comedies or dramas or action films. Like, he's a guy who keeps everything moving. And this starts out, as I said, where Castaway takes an hour to get to, of just everything being really drawn out. And these guys, these two main actors, who are sort of like holding back all the natural charm, which I think is deliberate. You can argue it works against the movie's best interest, but because these are two people who, like, they keep saying it in the movie, like, don't get emotional, like, don't let your emotions get involved here. You're seeing two people, you're meeting them cold, you don't know whether or not to take them on the level, and all you know is that these people spend their entire life faking relationships. So I think to some degree this movie is about, like, the uneasiness of being in a serious relationship with somebody. the sort of inherent trust you have to commit to. I'll never fully know another person. And this is like the nightmare scenario of it, right?
For a while, for about an hour of it, it feels like it's a movie about infidelity, right? And within a marriage.
Right.
And then they are, it turns out, allied by the end of it. But yeah, actually, I just want to.
Okay.
Yeah, you see, that's what. Yeah.
I got it.
I just want to interject that there's a scene in which Marion Cotillard's character is kind of testing the mettle of Brad Pitt's character by slowly unbuttoning her blouse lower and lower. And I just kept on imagining that it would also work if Brad Pitt were doing that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Just slowly revealing his pectoral muscles.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also like that Brad Pitt's reaction to that is Jesus. He's not like, you're playing a good game, and I can see what you're doing there. Like, he's just like, all right, my God, you're unbuttoning your shirt at lunch. What am I supposed to do
having
here?
An egg.
I love all the weird formality of that. Like, I like that this movie isn't look, it is obviously not realistic, but I think on an aesthetic level, it gets at some kind of interesting truth about what it must be like to be a career spy, right? And it just like the rooftop scenes are so fascinating to me because they don't have the kind of megawatt sexual chemistry that you would expect from this movie with these two actors. What they have is them having very banal, sort of formal conversations about like shop talk, while she also directs him in real time through how to seem like they're a sexually active couple. Like that they're exchanging war stories while also she's like, and now you have to like kiss me here.
Mm-hmm.
This person's watching.
I like that kind of stuff. The rules of pretending to be a fake couple. Obviously, the Americans, that was about a real couple. But like I like spy rules. That's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I like the scene. I love August Deal. I'm sure you guys agree.
So good.
Obviously, he's in Inglourious Bastards. He's in the Daniel Bruhl zone of like incredibly talented German actor who does all this wonderful stuff in his home country. And anytime Hollywood comes calling, he's like, "Is the film set in World War II? What's the script called? Is it called the Nazi gets shot in the face? So is that my role? Yeah, okay."
It's actually very generous that Malick let him play like the conscientious objector, because otherwise if he appears in an American film, he's almost always playing like Nazi asshole number 3.
Right, exactly. He recently played Karl Marx. Shout out to that movie, the young Karl Marx. But he's great. I like the scene, that scene. Right? Do you guys agree? The write down the formula for phosphate for me now.
Although they never pay off the formula for phosphate. I was thinking like...
Right. Does he buy it or not?
Yeah, he doesn't. It's never paid off. And I think it might have been. Here's how I would have put a button on that scene. He would have just said, "Well, I don't even know what it is, but okay." That's
the Forky and I was just like, "There's no way this guy knows what the formula for phosphate is." And she's like, "Well, maybe he looked it up beforehand, right? He knew a phosphate guy was coming through. I don't know."
I just Wikipedia'd it.
I have Encarta right here, of course. Not the Nazi. The Reich has all the technology. But and then the assassination scene rules. Like
rules.
Pitt and Cotillard just murdering people with machine guns. Like at like a fancy party. That scene where that moment where she points her gun at the nice society lady, and the lady's like, like that's great. Spy stuff, great. Love it.
But let's mention before that is them having sex in the car. They've like the tension's been like slowly building between these two very bottled people, and then they go out to the desert. They're in the car, and she sort of like throws out like, "We could just die tomorrow."
I would have driven back to a nice bed, but I guess I was just thinking, like,
Yeah, that thing-
oh man, that looks really uncomfortable. Like, where are they?
That is a
Yeah.
busted car. Yeah.
When I was younger, very aware that I'm still a young man, even though I feel like I'm 87. But when I was younger, I think as someone who grew up in New York City, I used to very much fetishize the idea of having sex in a car because it seemed like such a rite of passage, like such a suburban teenager thing. Like that's your space. That's your domain, the car. You got to use the car. And now I watch something like this and I just can't stop thinking about how uncomfortable it would be.
It just makes me physically
The
uncomfortable.
worst.
Yeah.
Right. Especially someone with a fucked back. I'm just like, there's no way I could enjoy that.
Not a fuck back, a fucked back.
Yes,
yes.
I should make that clear. I am not the fuck back of Notre Dame. I do have a fucked back.
I'm trying to think, and I'm sure we've talked about this over the course of this miniseries, but not a lot of sex scenes in Zemeckis movies.
No,
He's
that's
not-
another.
Much like
that's another thing.
Spielberg, it's not a topic of
Agreed.
frequent interest.
There's a diffidence. Yeah.
You're seeing some Brad tush.
We do see a
Yes.
lot of Brad's
Yep.
buttocks.
You do.
Brad
Well,
Bear's
there's only
butt.
2 of them. I mean, not that many of them.
You see
a lot.
both.
I mean,
Yeah, you see both.
They're out of
But
bunch.
look, it's a thing that's come up that, like, certainly because Zemeckis and Spielberg are so linked, Zemeckis is inherently a lot hornier than Spielberg, who feels like he goes out of his way to sort of avoid sex in his movies to some degree. And then when he does it in Munich, everyone clowns on it to this day. And Zemeckis does not often have like overt sex scenes, but there is certainly a greater strain of sexuality in his movies. But this feels like the one movie that is like kind of sexual in an adult way to me.
there's this weird moment in the party, isn't there, where there's like this kind of the World War II version of a bro asking these 2 girls to make out.
Yeah. And when they're like clearing everyone out of the party, Pitt opens up a closet and there's like a topless woman being like chased by a guy, Benny Hill style, that she asks him to go upstairs to check to see if anyone's fucking in the baby's room. Like it's certainly, and then you have Lizzie Kaplan as Brad Pitt's incredibly horny lesbian sister.
Yes, who's an actress who's almost 20 years younger than Brad Pitt. But maybe they have different moms. I don't know. But
really different moms.
But so when I interviewed Zemeckis for this movie, he was grumpy, not with me, just I don't know, had a grumpy vibe.
I think he's one of these guys who doesn't want to give too much to the press. It feels like that's a through
definitely
line.
not. Yeah. And also, like, he's been doing this for so long, he doesn't need to talk to some pipsqueak. But
also, he's more of a film spotting fan. He was like angry that he was talking to you.
Of course. But I remember we talked a lot about the whole, like, you know, undersung thing, especially in old movies, of like, yeah, Britain in the 40s, those people were going crazy. They were like, the world could end. We're being bombed all the time. Yeah, they were drinking like crazy. They were all having affairs. Obviously, lots of men were overseas as well. So, like, a lot of marriages had been like thrown to call, you know, like all kinds of crazy shit was happening. They were doing things like cocaine, you know, and like it was just a wilder time than this usually.
They were listening to swing music. They were getting
listening
nuts.
to swing music, and they were having parties, and like, you know, you think of Mrs. Miniver in these great British war movies where it's like the stiff upper lip Brits and all that. But yeah, it was the apocalypse. Like, you know, why wouldn't people be going crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
there's something striking about seeing like his office superior doing lines in the background of a party in which people are openly fucking. But that feels like, I mean, it's the weird tension of this movie that it's like he's doing this pastiche-y thing, but then he's also trying to deflate it a little bit as well by having them use more modern language and showing that sort of like debauchery.
But it's shot in quite a sort of conservative manner, right? That's the interesting thing. Is it's not like you don't have like foreground somebody doing blow, kind of in a weird like color timed kind of thing.
It's absolutely his least flashy movie, and the flashiest shots are still locked down by and large. Like anytime he does some sort of fancy framing in the movie, it's a pretty still, you know, shot held for a while. He's just doing something interesting with the composition and the layers.
There's a great either split diopter or fake split diopter shot where Brad Pitt is in bed being suspicious of of Marion Cotillard, and she's by a window, and it's two different, totally different planes of focus. It's quite cool, I think. And
I love that
he also
shit.
does a sort of reprise of his contact shot of the mirror shot where you can't see the camera. With Brad as well. There's some cool stuff.
It's less ostentatious.
It's less showy,
yes. Right.
Yeah, it's an unshowy movie. But let's just say the sex scene in the car is kind of like a denouement to this first movie, right? Like the first 45 minutes are kind of their own movie, and you could very much see that being the only story they wanted to tell. Two people assigned to a mission as spies, playing a married couple. They sort of fall in love, they execute the mission, and then they go their separate ways, right? That could very much be the movie. But instead, you have this sort of, this big denouement, this scene that for Zemeckis, it's alarming to see this kind of sex scene in a certain way, especially in a movie that does feel this old-timey and old-fashioned. It's not like copious nudity, but you're seeing Brad Pitt's butt. You're seeing those pie thrusts. And there's also like Mad Max fucking sandstorm happening outside the window.
There
like
is a sandstorm.
Well, the sandstorm feels like it's summoned by their sexual activity. Actually.
Right. It's so operatic, right? This one moment is so operatic, and then they go back to being like pretty professional. Like you cut to them, getting ready in the car. Briefing each other, and they're making like little flirty comments, but to some degree these are two characters who have been trained to like sever their emotions, right? They have learned how to become somewhat sociopathic.
Well, I think he's gone a bit gaga by that point though, right? Doesn't he say, he says twice, to a magnifique, right?
Sure, but he's saying it in his Brad Pitt like clenched way,
Right,
to a magnifique.
Yeah.
It's a Quebecois accent.
Then they show up with the guns, they mow everyone down, and then the film sort of jumps ahead to them being, him saying, let's go to London together. I'm going to take you to London. We're going to start over.
Right. Okay. And so here's the thing. Okay. So as you say, this movie kind of has a long epilogue. Right. That's partly because
long prologue.
It's long prologue and a long epilogue, though.
Correct.
Right? Like, because the epilogue is another thing. But, the middle of this movie is like, all right, flash forward, and there's that birth scene that we talked about. But basically, it's flash forward. He's married now. They have a kid. They live in Hampstead. The war's still on, but they have this nice domestic life. His sister's there. Blah, blah, blah.
This is now, like, at the 45-minute part, he pretty much resets and now does the standard Zemeckis opening where you, like, go through the house and see all the pictures on the wall.
Yep.
Yes.
Right. Now you're in the net neutral. Right. You're at the comfort, the home base.
Simon McBurney and Jared Harris playing British functionaries who are a little
weird.
Cool.
Weird casting.
I wrote down in my notes as soon as I saw Simon's face, oh shit, Simon McBurney, skullduggery.
He's not there to deliver good news. It's true.
Yeah,
he's
once
not
you see his face, you're like,
let's get a drink.
Oh boy.
First of
There's
all,
gonna be
happy birthday.
Some queasy cynicism is about to hit us.
Yeah. But you get this, like, okay, they have this, like, beautiful domestic life, right? This idyllic house. They hang out with his sister. They got this beautiful baby born in the most extreme circumstances ever. And then you see, like, Brad Pitt's got a pretty normal, like, office job now. He's a desk guy.
Yeah, he works at OSS or V section or wherever. And
they give him the heads up. He thinks it's going to be a promotion.
No, okay. So Simon McBurney is like, your wife, Marianne Beausejour, is a spy. As far as we're getting information. Mm-hmm. She stole this woman's identity. She's a German spy. You have to run a blue dye operation where you write some, info down, and we see if it gets passed along. Classic thing, right?
And then is introduced the craziest rule of all spying, whereby if your significant other proves to be a spy, you must kill him or her with your own hands, or you get killed, which is kind of like...
You have to do this, or else you have to kill the mother of your child, or else we'll know you're in on it too.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever.
Yeah. It's like a looper rule.
They tried to slip that curveball past us.
Right. You got to close your own loop.
Yes. But this is not the movie's fault, but Marion Cotillard. What he should now do is do the blue dye operation and sit and wait and find
just
out.
Chill, yeah.
Yeah, right. And instead, of course, the movie needs some stuff to happen. So he starts acting like a fucking maniac and running all over town being like, have you seen this woman? Like, is she the real Marion Bosiger? And handing pictures to pilots and eventually
he's
flying
putting up flyers on
right,
lampposts.
going to France himself and interrogating a vomiting drunkard like on a surreptitious prison break.
Which is so funny that he barfs first. I love that.
Yeah, the barf was good.
Yeah, where he's like, is this her? And he's like, yeah, that's she's great. Excuse me while I barf. I can't see a thing. Yeah, she had beautiful yellow eyes. He's like, no, she has blue eyes. Oh, yeah, no, blue, whatever.
May I play devil's advocate?
Go ahead.
This is where I think, to some degree, and like, not to psychoanalyze the man's life, right? But we talked about how Castaway and What Lies Beneath are the two movies that come right after his divorce. And in the same way, most directors who have robust careers start to check off certain genre boxes of the types of films they want to make or the types of actors they want to work with. Very often in a long enough career, if a director goes through a divorce, there's a movie that is very clearly the divorce movie. Right? There's a film that feels like, and we don't know the details. Right, we don't know the details of his divorce. It's not super public. He remarries quickly. He worked with his first wife. He now works with his current wife. Who knows, right? But Castaway and What Lies Beneath are films that feel like obvious divorce movies, right? Like Castaway is a man being forced on an island by himself to figure out who he is. And What Lies Beneath is a movie about like the weird tension of a marriage that's been going on for a long time and reckoning with what they sacrificed to get to that point. And this feels like a sort of a much more generous post-divorce movie about just trying to figure out like why relationships end on an allegorical level, right? The idea of there like being potentially at any given point a bomb under the table of a relationship that could upset the entire thing.
Sure.
Be it something from the past or that they've changed, that they fundamentally changed, to no longer be compatible with you. And this movie's sort of about someone who like two people who fall in love at the one moment they could possibly fall in love. Right? If they had met a week earlier, she would have been a German spy. Not a week, but you know what I'm saying. And like after this, she would have gone back to Germany if he hadn't grabbed her at the end of the mission and said, move to London with me. And they're trying to outrun the outside circumstances, fighting against the idea of them being together because of this sort of inexplicable connection that people feel to each other. People falling in love in a relationship that's kind of intrinsically doomed.
Okay, when I talked to Zemeckis, we eventually at some point we talked about how fatalistic the movie is, right? And it's about fatalistic people. They're living in London and during the Blitz, and you could die tomorrow, right? Like that's informing so much behavior. And here's what he says. I'm just going to read this. The thing that makes love stories work, in my opinion, in movies and novels and country and Western songs is the feeling of longing. We have to evoke the feeling of longing, the painful feeling. That's what we as humans understand as love. No one can define love, but if you attempt to, the closest you can get is longing. And that has a melancholy to it. You can say dread or doom. It's that feeling we all feel when we fall in love with someone. We have this horrible, fearful feeling that maybe we'll never have this person in our life. If you want to get existential about it, all love affairs will always end in horrible pain.
Right. Oof. I feel like that's what he's dealing with on a metaphorical level, on top of the constant question of whether you truly know the person you're with, whether you can ever truly trust them,
Yes, exactly. But it's that thing of like, the minute you fall in love with someone or the minute you buy a puppy, right? Like you will have that sort of dark thought in the back of your head of like, Jesus, one day this thing's going to die.
Yeah.
The puppy might be a German spy secretly.
And also,
you'd have to kill it.
You got to run a blue dye.
Right, but also like what could this thing do to break my heart? The obvious tragedy is I lose them, right? But also like how could they fundamentally betray my trust in some kind of way? And I do feel like this whole section of the movie where you're saying Brad Pitt has zero chill and is fucking shit up rather than just letting the test play out is because he is so full of nervous energy. The mere accusation flips him out, right? He loses his cool in the room with McBurney and Harris. And he's just, I think, trying to control his universe. There is now a process in play that he cannot control. The results will come out in the wash. And he's telling himself, if I go and track down everyone who I think has seen this woman, can I get the result I want to hear?
But, you know, he could just sit her down and be like, look, here's the situation. They tell me you're a spy and I have to kill you. Are you a spy or not? Come on, let's just talk it out. Believe me, I won't kill you. Let's figure it out.
Which instead, he becomes like a total psycho to her. Like, there's this whole section of the movie where he's like,
sure.
Yeah,
right,
weird.
Right, and you're kind of questioning, is she innocent and is he now seem like a spy to her?
But the thing is, even when he knows the very worst of it, right? Like, she's betrayed him. She was fooling him that whole first 45 minutes in Casablanca. She's made him betray his side. He doesn't care by the end of it. So it's not, you know, even having been betrayed, he's still more about his love for her.
Right.
Which is bananas, actually. It's kind of a
well, the question then kind of becomes
that is love, as Zemeckis might tell us, right?
Yeah. It's wild sort of puppy love, and it's also like, for him, I think the greater question of allegiance is, okay, if she's a spy, if this was a setup, can I at least hear that it became real at some point, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there's no way to reconcile with her original intentions. The thing he wants to get out of this is, but now it's real. Now there's still an actual thing. At some point she changed. At some point she evolved. This wasn't illegitimate. I wasn't living a fiction.
The thing is, when she does finally admit it, right at the end, when he, you know, sits her in front of a piano and demands she plays La Marseillaise, and she says, "I'm not Sam from Casablanca."
Yeah.
Sorry. She says, like, "Yeah, what could I'm so sorry. What could I do? I love you. Like, you know, they were threatening our daughter, and like that's why I had, you know, like she."
Right.
And it's
I genuinely thought if I came to London, I would get away from them. They wouldn't be able to find me. That woman who's been babysitting our baby is actually a fucking German spy, and she's got the baby
close the
at
circuit,
gunpoint.
obviously.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there's only one drunk guy who could identify her, right?
Right.
Right. And there's the guy who's like, "Oh, I saw her and I'll never see anything again. Now I'm turning my head. You can see I have no eyes."
Yeah. Matthew Good saying like, "Oh, saw her through this bad eye or my no eye?" Which one?
But no, I also just like when she finally gives the explanation, it's almost incidental. We're like, yeah, no, we know. At this point, we know. We get it. You were in an impossible situation. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like even a shocking reveal, which is interesting for a movie. This is not a criticism. It's interesting for a movie that is predicated on is she or isn't she? Right. That by the end we're like, oh no, I mean, of course she is.
Well,
like,
it's hard to do a reveal with someone not being able to do something. It'd be more like if she was known as a German spy with a tendency to play the tambourine, and then suddenly she started jamming out with a band. You saw that would be the big twist.
Give me that thing. God, she's so good at the tambourine. No one's that good.
But her not playing the Marseillaise is inherently not it's kind of less of a twistaroo.
I was hoping that she tried to just like slam her way through.
The alternate scene where she's like, da, 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 da.
No, but and also the drunk guy is like, she played the Marseillaise so beautifully.
It was so
seriously,
good.
not just like she was just learning the piano, but she had to be really good.
I like the simplicity of that moment, though, that it's like she sits there in front of the piano and then she puts the cover down, and it's like, I'm not even going to pretend. Like, you got me. Because I think in and of itself, the fact that she surrenders that easily to the ruse is sort of the moment where he realizes, like, oh, we're both on the same level here, which is that we're now terrified about you dying. That, like, love of country, who gives a shit? It's just about keeping you alive at this moment. And then this completely, like, you know, harebrained plot of, like, let's just drive really quickly to a plane and fly out of here, and they'll never find us ever again.
Yes.
Bad idea.
This is true.
Bad idea.
Where are you going to
go? It's compelling. A lot of that stuff is compelling. Pitt is so weird in some of those scenes, but it's very compelling. I guess. I like when he shoots the nanny. That's a great scene.
Great.
just absolutely murdering a 60-something woman
Yes.
in a Hampstead townhouse.
You don't see enough of that in the movies.
No, he should do that once a movie, every movie.
And the sort of mania of the final thing where he's like trying to get the plane started and she's like wrapping up her baby because she knows it's over, and Jared Harris like drives his car into a propeller.
Yeah, to stop the propeller.
Yeah.
I love that shit.
I liked when the
That's
propeller
fun.
just messed up the car. I was like, oh, that's
Yeah.
Right.
intriguing.
Then you have that moment that I love that I think is like a powerful Zemeckis shot where they're like in the rain and here's like Jared Harris and Brad Pitt yelling outside this plane, and she's in the backseat of the car with the baby looking through the front window, and it's just like here are just two men like yelling at each other. You know?
I will say though, this movie cost like $100 million to make for Paramount, and this was really in a tough period for Paramount where they were experiencing a lot of flops. You know, they were betting
Into
on
the
these
Brad
big
Gray
movies and-
area. Sure.
right? And like the end of this movie is Jared Harris is like, Mr. Pitt, I arrest you for high treason at once against Her Majesty the Queen, and then she shoots herself, and you see it, and he's like, that's all, boys. Brad Pitt will instead get the Medal of Decency and will never speak of this again. And then it's like, roll credits. And then Bobby Zemeckis just comes on screen. He's like, I hope you enjoyed the movie. He files out and Donald Trump is president. Like, it is a wild thing to expect audiences to go out and be like, cinema score for that one.
Sure.
It's a very abrupt ending.
Yeah.
In a wide, right? You don't sort of cut in on Jared Harris thinking it over, Brad Pitt with a
Right.
No.
hangdog look.
No, you see her like looking at the abstracted figures through the window, making the decision, grabbing the gun, covering the baby, walking out. Then she sort of like says her "I love you." He says his "I love you," turns away, and then she pretty much walks into a close up and shoots herself in the head.
Yeah.
It's wild, and then it's just like Brad Pitt's immediate reaction is so good. I think he plays that moment so incredibly well, where even before the actual tragedy of the thing hits, just the shock of it, like his instantaneous knee-jerk reaction almost to just the sound of the gunfire, and you see him over her shoulder in the shot. And then they cover up the body. Jared Harris goes like 5 cheers for Brad Pitt, and then drives away. And then the end of the movie is like fucking Marion Cotillard's written a sad letter to her daughter being like, we must admit
Dear
I was a
daughter.
spy. I was going to die at some point. I assume if you're
Right.
reading this, they shot me in the head. I love you, Raffi
blood
Cassidy from
went
Tomorrowland.
everywhere.
Yeah. That is Raffi Cassidy. They hired Raffi Cassidy.
Is that right? Yes, they did.
Yes,
they did.
to
They
be in a bunch of still photos, and then I guess you see her from behind petting a horse with Brad.
That's kind of like an antiquated, when someone records a videotape in the event of my death, play this
Right.
videotape.
Right.
Yes.
I always love when people do that. I
Yes.
should start making them now for myself.
You should make them for all kinds of scenarios. Though, like, I assume
Yeah,
if you're watching
absolutely.
it means I fell off my speedboat
Right.
that I eventually bought.
If you're watching this now, I opened my window at the safari at Six Flags and something went down.
But that's essentially what she does. It's like, here's the letter in case of my death. I assume I, for one reason or another, will not live to see you grow up, my daughter. So here's a letter, and the letter is like, I got to admit I fucked up. This one's on me.
Sorry.
I loved your father, but I got myself into a real pickle. Also, jet fume could not melt steel beams. If you really look into it. And then the movie fades to black. But no, that's right. It's like hard fade to black. Credits, sad, pulled back Alan Silvestri score, and then he transitions to playing jazz music. Like then the credits, the rest of the credits play out with like the dun 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 dun.
Right. The movie's actually about the birth of modern jazz. I mean, that's really what's been going on this whole time.
It's a bleak movie.
It's a bleak movie. I don't know. Does it earn it, I guess, is the question, right? Like, does it earn this incredibly bleak, sad ending? I don't know. I kind of like Allied. When am I going to watch Allied? Like, Griff, you like this movie. Did you watch it again before?
No, absolutely not. This was the first time I've watched it again. I saw it in theaters the weekend it came out. I saw it with Jordan Fish and Rachel Torrey, friends of the show. And we were like, oh, that's the best movie Zemeckis has made in like 20 years, right? That thing rules. But it definitely felt like, I don't know, it almost felt like the flip side of what you're describing, where it was like, oh, Donald Trump has just been elected. We want to wallow in like epic misery, right? And just sort of like doomed love, sort of like watch as the world burns around us and we have to kill each other shit. But I also remember like the audience reacting audibly to it. I mean, I feel like it had that kind of palpable tension in the theater, seeing at the AMC 25, where like, you know, in the moment when he's gets the guy to look at the picture and say that it's her, there were sort of like gasps, certainly when she shot herself in the head. I don't know. It's just like one of those things where it's like, I felt like I kind of had an ideal theatrical viewing of it. I certainly liked it a lot, again, watching it this time. But I remember it feeling kind of magical being captive in a theater watching it, especially with how sort of deliberately paced the movie is, how quiet it is, how bottled it is. There was something about the tension of being there in the theater that really got me. I'll watch it again at some point. It's not like one I'm going to throw on once a week. Right. It's not like I watch Allied when I can't fall asleep.
I mean, I could see parts of this movie lulling you to bed.
Hey, now.
I watched it on iPad while I was putting my middle child to bed in two different sections while Winnie the Pooh was playing to the side. So I can't say I had the ideal theatrical experience.
Sure. And we should also mention we should also mention we asked you to cover this movie. Like, we sent you the full Zemeckis list and you gave us some options and you sort of said like, Allied's kind of interesting because I have a fondness for like World War II movies. And then I sort of pushed on you like, I'd really like you to come on this episode because David and I disagree on this movie. But I knew the risk of you might just not care for this movie at all.
I don't know. I don't know. I think I'm in the middle of you guys, really.
Wow.
That's what I thought would happen. I'm also in the middle, though. I think this movie has a lot of interesting stuff going on.
Feels like everyone's in the middle.
Yeah. I mean, by Zemeckis standards, I just like this period much more than the mocap period.
Absolutely.
That's not really a hot take. I think there's interesting stuff going on in Flight, The Walk, Allied, and Marwen. Mm-hmm. None of those movies are, out and out hits for me. I think Flight is the closest.
Yeah. See, this is far and away my favorite of this period, of his 2010s.
But I appreciate that he at least tries stuff. And, I wonder about this, this next phase, but I also wonder about this next phase of Hollywood. And I also wonder if we'll ever see a movie again. So, can't really lay all that at Mr. Bobby's feet right now.
This is the other factor at play, which is I think I have a soft spot for this kind of movie in a career, which is blank check director has massive success early on, right? And then they get to a point where they're just sort of like, oh, you've been like a major player for 3 or 4 decades. You can do anything, but maybe you're a little bit like out of the pocket at this point, right? You have your sort of like empire period, like Tim Burton or whatever. And then you get to that period where you're sort of like, what do I do now? What do I evolve into? And this feels for me like Big Eyes, another movie which I defend more than most people, where it's like, this feels like the most exciting thing to see a guy like this do, even though this movie was very expensive. It's like to do a movie that is so stripped down, because we've said, like Spielberg and like Lucas and a lot of those guys, Zemeckis has been one of these guys who now when he does interviews sort of like complains about the modern state of the film industry and that movies aren't made for grown-ups. Right.
And Hollywood doesn't make a lot of original movies anymore. And
everything's franchise, everything's whiz bang, this and that. Despite him being a big special effects guy, it does feel like to some degree he's tried to do a little bit of the Spielberg thing where like they'll make a family film, they'll make a larger film, but also they really try to use their clout to make the type of adult drama that doesn't get made anymore. And so I do just find this film exciting as like, this is an interesting argument for what late period Zemeckis could be. For him making a movie that is almost diametrically opposed to the types of films he started out making, but are very much the kind of films that only an elder statesman can make. And also, not to steal her point, coming up in next week's episode, But Emily Yoshida, mother of Blankies, in our Welcome to Marwen episode, brought up the fact that many directors in the sort of the later period of their career start to like obsessively make movies about making movies. It feels like the material that jumps out to them is almost always a movie about storytelling or the movie about process that can somehow be mapped onto movies. And this is not that. Like, this is very much a movie that is about a relationship and a situation. You know, it feels like he is just into the kind of gambit of what the script is presenting. It's not something that he's mapping onto his sort of artistic sort of mantra. In a way that Marwen does and The Walk does, you know.
I'd say it's a very curious cinematic object, this movie, right? Because in some ways it feels so conservative in the way that it's sort of presented, but there's some really quite strange elements to it, edgy things.
It's edgy in its way.
It's also like you said, David, that you wish he threw some grain onto it. Like, the language for this type of movie we understand is someone going full Mank, right? Or at least partial Mank.
Mank is grainless too. This is so crazy about Mank, but whatever. We'll talk about Mank another day.
But this is what I'm saying, that you lean more into the pastiche and emulating the technology of the time. And I do think there's a cognitive dissonance thing here that works for me, but I understand doesn't work for other people, where it's like he's using entirely modern technology to replicate a very artificial, old-timey sort of world. For me, it works a lot better than it does in The Walk. It's the best marriage of those things. And I think it's also the one of the modern movies where it feels like the technology isn't the point. Like, he's using the technology in service of the story. It's not by and large, imagine if this was done with this technology. It's just sort of like the trimming of it, which I like.
Let's play the box office game.
It's the great Allied off 2021.
Absolutely. 2021, my friend.
Yeah.
Let's play the box office game, though, Griffin. It's November 20. It's Thanksgiving time. 2016.
Gobble, gobble.
Who doesn't love to take their family to watch Brad Pitt and Marianne fuck in a car, make a baby, and then have her shoot herself in front of the baby?
Yeah, I took my whole family to see Allied, and every single member of my family divorced me individually.
Number 4. It opens number 4 to 12 million. Griffin, can you tell me the final domestic total of Allied?
30?
40. Makes 120 worldwide, 119. So that's Allied. What's
at
number
least
1?
80, probably over 100. What's number 1? Okay, Thanksgiving, and the year is 2014?
16.
16. So, Trump. So is this the final Hunger Games?
No, it is not. I think that might have been the year before. It is an animated film. It's new this week. It's a big hit, and I feel like it's only gotten bigger in the years since.
Is it Moana?
Moana!
Is this the week that America began considering the coconut?
Exactly.
Wow.
$82 million opening weekend for Moana and Thanksgiving.
I do think, I feel like that's maybe your favorite of the modern Disney era. And at the time you were sort of like, yeah, it's good. But I do think it's grown for people.
It's one of the two movies I saw the week Trump was elected. The other was Allied. And I think they really skewed my take on both of them.
And we'll never talk about Moana on this podcast ever again. What's number 2 at the box office?
It's it was number 1 the week before. It's a franchise starter, but it's also a franchise entry. Sort of
is it like a side
prequel? Yeah, like a side prequel. Let's call it the side prequel.
Franchise.
It has spawned a sequel, and another is in production, and there's been nothing wrong with the production of this new film.
Oh, boy.
Nothing weird going on there.
I know this one, don't I? Yeah, I do.
Please.
Chris?
It's Dinosaur Land.
It's
Jurassic
not, right?
World. No?
That was my first
not
thought.
Jurassic World. It's not
man.
Jurassic World.
I thought I was going to gazump
I know.
Griffin.
But now I'm trying to think about other franchises that have dared move forward during a pandemic.
Exactly.
Oh, is it the Crimes of Grombledorng?
Oh,
exactly.
Those Fantastic Beasts.
Yeah.
Right. It was the film that Dare asked, what if they were fantastic beasts?
Yeah.
And if so, where would we find them?
See, this is the problem. I think Chris and I were just thinking about trying to make a movie during a pandemic and not thinking about the single most cursed movie currently in existence. A movie that every day seems to step on another witch's toes and collect a new curse upon its very nature.
It's just that whole thing where it's like, all right, okay, we've decided to fire Johnny Depp. And we're just not going to think too much about J.K. Rowling right now.
Or Ezra Miller.
Let's begin production in the middle of COVID. Like, you know, like it's not like...
People need this movie. They're protesting in the streets.
That's why they're protesting, right? They're saying boo earns.
Yeah. We should not show any doubt.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, Fantastic Beasts.
Where to find them.
David, that was a great Simpsons reference, and you get 10 Simpsons reference points.
Wow.
Oh my God. Wow. If I had gotten Simpsons reference points if they could turn them into money, I would be a billionaire at the age of 12. All right. Number 3 at the box office, Griffin. It's another in we talk about these movies all the time. Movies that came out right around Trump time. It's another franchise movie. We did a commentary episode on it.
We did a commentary episode on it. Is it Doctor Strange?
Doctor Strange.
Doctor. Yeah, because, right.
News.
I think I talked about this in some other episode, but I saw Doctor Strange with my mom right after Trump was elected because The Accountant was sold out.
Right. The Accountant has dropped to number 15 on this box office.
Wow.
Number 4 is Allied. Number 5, one of the best movies of 2016.
Is it Arrival?
Arrival.
From
How do you like Arrival, Chris? Have you seen Arrival?
I do very much. Yes, I do. That's all I'll say.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: is like I didn't understand the twist. I felt like the stupidest person
first time you saw it?
going.
Right.
I didn't even understand when they revealed it. I was like, "Why has she got such a big problem marrying this guy?"
To be fair, Chris, my mom had the exact same hang up. I saw it with her. We talked about it. She was like, I think I liked it. I mean, I just didn't like it as much as you. And then like a week later, she was like, can I ask you like one lingering question I've had about Arrival? And I was like, sure. And the question belied the fact that she did not understand anything that happened.
Some other movies in the top 10. Trolls, from director Richard Lawson. Bad Santa 2. Remember that happened?
Of course.
Directed not by Terry Zwigoff, but by Mark Waters. What else have we got? We've got Almost Christmas. Which one is that?
Which one's that? Almost Christmas?
Almost Christmas. That's right. That's the one. It's the family comedy. It's like Danny Glover, Monique, Romany Malco. Like it's like a fun. People like that movie. People have talked that one up to me. I've never seen it. Hacksaw Ridge. Speaking of war movies.
Yeah.
Number 9.
And it's really unfair what happened to that movie. I mean, such a byproduct of cancel culture. It's really, Mel Gibson is like a problematic figure, and they canceled him so hard, and as a punishment, he only got nominated for Best Director and Best Picture.
I was just waiting for you to land the plane. That's
no, it's just elemental truth that cancel culture is out of control.
Right. And number 10, another of the best movies of 2016, The Edge of 17. Great movie.
Yes.
That I love and rewatch
That's a great
lot.
movie.
Chris, if you've seen The Edge of 17.
I have not seen it. I got to see it. The idea of someone rewatching a movie a lot to me is so crazy.
Well, you know what?
No, I don't mean that it's a bad movie or anything like that. I'm like, my God, I have no time.
I know.
That's also, you're a father, Chris.
Yeah.
But sometimes you got to watch Gummo a bunch.
Sometimes
with
you
your
gotta watch
kids.
Gummo a bunch.
Yeah, I recommend it if you haven't
Sounds
done
like a
that
kid's
already,
movie,
Chris.
right?
It's really, it reminds me of my childhood. So
He's always making kids movies. Kids, Gummo.
Yeah.
Trash Humpers. That's more
Trash
adolescence,
Humpers.
but
Yeah. That one's more for kids instead of about kids. The Edge of 17 is the first time I saw Haley Lou Richardson, I feel like, who, Chris, you've worked with several times.
She's the
I think
best.
is like one of the big stars of tomorrow.
She's so great.
I know. That was her breakout for sure. I
Right.
had not seen
That's
The
where she
Bonds,
popped for
which
me.
She has
no,
a small
right.
role in. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Haven't seen that. But I was rewatching your movie finale before this as well, and she's so good in that. She fucking rules.
She was awesome. She has actually a pretty extraordinary range, and like very goofy in person. But the moment that the camera goes on, she just kind of like this dead set focus.
Yeah.
Really,
man,
that's wild.
She's great. It's one of the things that this pandemic cost us is the release of After Yang, the new Kogonada movie where there's like robot babysitters and Colin Farrell's in it and she's in it, and I got to see that thing. I know you produced Columbus,
best to delay it. Yeah, that's my.
Of course,
my guy.
I can wait.
Yeah,
I can wait.
Well, I mean, right? You produced Columbus, Chris. That movie, David, sounds like it was produced by you, and not only produced by you, but you held everyone involved up at gunpoint and demanded they make that movie. Like that feels
you're gonna play a robot or something. David doesn't really know the details, but
that feels like a Kim Jong-un like holding filmmakers hostage.
Yeah. Anyway, can't wait to see After Yang whenever it does come out. And we, 2021, I do hope I'll be seeing movies in the theater again, but who knows?
Oh man, yeah, here's to that.
Here's to that.
Chris, thank you for coming back on the show. We gotta do it more often.
Thank you for having me. I'm around anytime.
Well, this is the thing is we were like, you got to do Allied, and you were like, yeah, that sounds great. And we were like, great, it comes out in January.
Great. I'll talk to you in a
We
year.
had this conversation
See you in
in
6
March.
months. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I thought you guys had forgot actually.
No. I mean, I'm
never
bad at
forget.
responding to emails, but also we booked most of Zemeckis in like March and April when it looked like he was winning, and we were just so freaked out about the pandemic. And like, I guess we're just recording everything remotely now. Let's lock down like all these guests, but that's like 20 episodes. We booked like 20 episodes ahead.
Hey, Chris, thanks for the ongoing, creative support as a producer of Night Eggs. It means a lot. Those meetings, are just, it's encouraging me to continue on with this journey.
I'm glad because, I know it's been a tough year for all kinds of filmmakers, but I feel like next year is our year.
Yeah, I agree. Well, this year, because
that's right.
We're in it. We're in it. So stay tuned.
I think Night Eggs is going to be the movie that finally gets people back to the theaters again. It's going to be the sort of homecoming film.
Yeah, you need a movie that's like a kind of a spectacle.
Right. Well, hey, all right.
Yeah.
Exclusively on 4DX? What do? Well, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Big,
Gotta go 4DX only.
Big horses, IMAX.
Yeah.
You can feel the gallop in your seat.
Oh boy.
That's what it should be, Ben. It should be 4D IMAX. You should demand that IMAX theaters convert to 4DX seats, and that's the only way that Night Eggs can be projected.
I need smells. I need rumbles.
Chris, people should watch Operation Finale. I mean, I just watched it for kicks before this to reacclimate myself with your filmmaking style, re-World War II, but it's such a good movie.
Oh, thanks, man.
And it's on Hulu.
I was doing some funny stuff in the course of doing that. My mom's in that movie.
We have the Imitation of Life scene.
Imitation of Life. Yeah.
Which is so good. I love that. Yeah.
And weirdly, we shot that scene in the very cinema in Buenos Aires where those two characters did meet in real life. So that's wild. Wild.
Yeah. Great scene. I'll plug that too. People should watch Imitation of Life. That's a great movie that your mom's in.
It is a
very
weepy.
good movie. We're done.
We're done. Griff. Thank you guys. Thank you for having me so much.
Please. My mom's going to be so thrilled. She complains about the fact that you're not on the show enough because she finds you relaxing as opposed to us screaming and yelling.
We are not relaxing. That's a great.
We're not
that's
relaxed.
a great note by your mom, honestly.
Yeah, zero shell. But watch those two movies and tune in next week for Marwin with Emily Yoshida. Mother Blanky's coming back to welcome you all. And thank you all for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Thanks to Lane Montgomery for our theme song, Joe Bowen and Pat Reynolds for our artwork. Go to blankies.reddit.com for some real nerdy shit, and go to our Shopify page for some real nerdy merch. New stuff being added all the time. We're getting back on that horse. Go to patreon.com/blankcheck, we're doing it, baby. We're going down under. We're doing the Crocodile Dundee movies. The obvious
That's right.
next franchise to tackle. MCU, Star Wars, Alien, Mission Impossible, Toy Story, Crocodile Dundee. It's a clear pattern.
All right. That's it.
And
Do
as
the
always-
other thing. There you
And as always, Brad Pitt shows a lot of buttocks in this movie.